Happy New Year! And welcome to the future, otherwise known as episode 26 of Tomorrow's World Audit Time. Happy New Year, Mark.
Happy New Year, Russ. What a time to be alive.
2023.
Amazing, isn't it? So futuristic.
Don't most decades, the first couple of years, are just hangovers from the previous decades. Once you hit 83, 93, 2003, that's when you really get into the decade proper, isn't it?
Decade starts. Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah. So
This is the first year of the 2020s. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah.
Do you know a footballer signed a contract the other day that ran for 7 years? So it runs out. They kept saying he's got a contract till the year 2030, which sounds so improbably futuristic. Yes, I like it there.
I saw
first year of 2020.
I was browsing the Guardian earlier today, and I saw a news article. Scientists use lasers to direct lightning. I thought, wow, that.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that is futuristic, isn't it? You know, lasers and lightning. I would imagine like those scientists have got some real swagger when they go down the old science conference, haven't they? You know, what have you been doing? Oh, I've been, I don't know, looking at squirrel feces or something like that. And then, oh, what have we been doing? Oh, yeah, we've been firing lasers at lightning. Yeah.
To what end? Sorry.
I think they reckon they can control lightning.
Control it?
By firing a laser at it, so that it keep it away from airports or something like that.
Okay. I thought they were trying to attract it. But if you have a laser that can shoot lightning, what do you need lightning for?
I mean, it does sound like something that's going to get into the wrong hands, and we could.
It does.
Gosh,
okay.
I'm sure. Exciting. Obviously, if Tomorrow's World was still around, it would be featuring on their program this week. But unfortunately.
Well, no, I mean, based on the last few episodes of Tomorrow's World that we've watched, it's probably a good thing it's not around. Can you imagine how appalling it would be?
Yeah, no, it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah, that's awful. Yeah. Well, I mean, as I've said before, BBC Click is probably the closest thing, and I absolutely hate.
True, you hate that, don't you? Yeah, and I do enjoy looking on the socials and seeing the amount of people who talk about how Click is as good as Tomorrow's World. Oh, it's like Tomorrow's World. Like, luckily Russell isn't looking at this as well. He'd be furious. And listeners, I promise you, Russell's going to get angry later on when he reveals something that you don't even know yet, and it's got nothing to do with Click. So thank God.
Well, anyway, talking of the weather, Mark, over the Christmas period, I was. As you do, watching lots of television around my mum's house. And I stumbled across a documentary on Channel 5, which was all about the Great Storm of 1987, which took place on the 15th of October 1987. And I thought, oh, wow, so that means it was the 35th anniversary last year. And I thought, oh, that'd be. I mean, obviously, we couldn't do it at the time because you were forcing us to do that awful episode around football in the World Cup.
You told me that was a birthday gift.
But I think, I think that's quite an interesting event. It's certainly a very important event in my life. And I thought maybe we could, do an episode that's
absolutely
from that day. Because there was an episode of Tomorrow's World on the very night of the storm, 15th of October, 1987. But you don't remember you weren't involved in the storm.
Not the same way, no, because we were still in Ireland at the time. So I remember it as a news story. I do remember as a news story. I remember the pictures on the news the following day of like a battered south of England. But I have no experience of it whatsoever. The closest I can come to is that, when we did move over like a year and a bit later, there were still parts that I do remember fallen trees, and I do remember people talking about, the storm was still a live issue that people were still talking about. Famously, how many, there were Seven Oaks in Seven Oaks.
Yep.
And, one day later there were two,
no,
I think.
One. There was only one. Now. Six of them blew down.
Six of them blew down, which is, people still talk about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I have no real tangible memories. Not like you, were like, tell everyone. It's astonishing.
Oh, yeah, we were slap bang in the middle of it. It was, I remember it so I was only 6 years old, but I remember it so clearly. Such was the sort of dramatic impact of, it's obviously the most exciting thing to ever happen to me up to that point. But I remember my mum came and woke me up in the middle of the night because she was a bit concerned about how strong the wind was. And then our neighbours over the road, they had some really tall pine trees next to their driveway. And the pine trees had fallen over, and they crushed all of their cars in their driveway and come to a stop hanging over their house. So there was a big concern that if the cars had not been there, the trees would have gone straight through their house. So they're kind of lucky in a way, although they did have like a load of crushed cars. But they were concerned, so they actually came over to take refuge in our house because there weren't any trees endangering our house. in the middle of the night. And then I just remember just staying up all night. And then the next morning, once the light come up and you could actually see in the garden everything, massive oak trees in our garden had just blown over. They just like completely clean blown over. And we had no electricity. And we didn't have any electricity for 2 weeks after the storm. It was amazing. It was everything was lit by candlelight every night. It was quite atmospheric. It was quite exciting. I read lots of books, sitting by the fire and the candle. It was good. Look back on it fondly. We were quite lucky because we had a thing called a Rayburn, which is kind of like an Arga, which is powered by coal and logs. So there was definitely not a shortage of logs to fuel it, and that obviously allowed us to cook, and that heated our water and our heating and everything. So we were okay, really. We had a few neighbours coming over to cook things on our cooker sometimes because they were relying on electricity and things like that. But it was brilliant. It really, really changed the landscape around the area. It was just for years to come. There was just uprooted trees everywhere, just completely changed the look of everything, and sort of vistas opening up that you couldn't see before because they blocked by trees. I do remember there was one bloke who lived down our lane who, obviously because there's so many trees to clear, he thought it would be a good idea to invest in a new chainsaw and like go around,
of course,
earning a crust.
Where you grew up was just full of, I'm going to call them in inverted commas, entrepreneurs.
But so he got himself a new chainsaw, and then the first tree that he clambered, he obviously was not qualified in any way. The first tree that he clambered up, he fell out of it, broke both his legs.
Oh my God.
He never really did walk properly again. That's a funny little story. But the clean-up afterwards was really good. There was like a real sort of sense of community with everyone, getting around and trying to clear away all the old trees and stuff. And yeah, it was great times. I mean,
well, it was the most exciting thing to happen to Hever since Anne Boleyn was killed. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, nothing else happened in between. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to know some facts about the storm, Mark?
I would. Yeah, definitely.
We always called it the hurricane. Obviously, it wasn't a hurricane because hurricane has to be a very specific type of wind and it only occurs in a certain place. This was a storm, but it did have hurricane force winds, which means the winds were over 80 miles per hour. The highest speed was recorded in Normandy, actually. It was 135 miles an hour. Although in Shore and by Sea, they recorded 120 miles per hour, which then broke the wind speed machine. So it could have been faster. They don't know. Could have been more. Yeah. So where I lived, there were gusts of 80 miles per hour almost continuously for 4 hours, which is why so many trees got blown over. And there's an estimated 15 million trees got blown over by the wind. And mainly because it was quite a mild autumn, so the trees hadn't lost their leaves yet. So obviously,
they were like sails then.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of sails, one of my favourite stories from it is that apparently in the village of Clayton in West Sussex, they just restored a windmill, right, an antique windmill, and the wind was, even though they put the brakes on it, it was like the what do you call it, the sails? What would you call
sails,
it?
Yeah, the windmill.
The sails were not meant to be able to spin, but the wind was so strong that it overrode the brake, and the sails started to spin. But because the brake was applied, it created friction.
It burned down,
and the mill caught fire.
Oh my God!
Yeah, astonishing. I mean, what other damage was there? Well, the National Grid shut down the entire southeast England, including London, because they were worried about the whole network just completely, because all the wires were clashing into each other and causing burnouts and things like that. And they reckon there was more damage done to the power network in that one night than had been done to the power network in the whole previous decade. And then at sea, there was a few ships there's quite a famous photo of a Sea Link ferry that's been beached. But elsewhere, a big tanker that capsized and sank, and our old friend, the Herald of Free Enterprise, which was being towed to Taiwan for scrapping after embarrassing itself with that disaster previously.
Yep. Shame.
That broke free of its tug because the wind snapped the thing and it went off, disappeared off into the sea. They had to quickly go and catch that. So but only 22 people died, which they put down to the fact that everyone was in bed. That was quite lucky. They reckon if it had happened during the day, it would have been a lot worse. But it cost the insurance industry £2 billion, which would have been £6 billion in today's money. What else? Oh, due to power failure at the BBC studios, Nicholas Witchell had to present the news from the CBBC broom cupboard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's good.
Is there any footage of that?
I don't know.
Gosh, that's incredible.
But yeah, I mean, the result of it was there was obviously the Met Office got in a lot of trouble, particularly Michael Fish, famously.
Infamously.
But it did lead to a lot of improvements at the Met Office. They bought themselves another supercomputer to help them do the. But Michael Fish is a bit disingenuous, right? He subsequently claimed, because he's the famous quote is, was it earlier on today? A woman rang the BBC,
yes,
and said she heard there's a hurricane on the way. Well, if you're watching, don't worry, there isn't, right? So that's pretty unequivocal. Unequivocal?
Yes. Yeah.
Apparently, Fisher subsequently claimed that he was talking about a hurricane approaching Florida.
Oh, do you know what word popped into my head, Russ? Because I was thinking like he's going to focus on the word hurricane here, and the word that popped into my head was sophistry.
Why
would
he say
beating around nonsense, utter nonsense. He does the national weather forecast on the BBC. And then there is no way. Yeah. No, he's lying. Yeah. No.
And then
don't meet your heroes.
He subsequently claimed after that nobody phoned up the BBC and she was a non-existing woman, despite the fact that the woman who phoned up has been identified.
I feel like I've heard an interview with her. Like her name's Brenda.
Anita Hart, her name is.
Anita. I knew it began with an A. End with an A. So he lied about what he thought the phone call was, and then he lied that there was a phone call, even though the evidence of him apparently flat out lying to the audience about this made-up phone call is famous footage.
Yeah.
It's one of those where, like, I imagine people who they have to kind of take that test on what life in Britain to become like a new British citizen. I imagine Michael Fish is on every page of that text. You must understand the context of this clip. What a liar! Oh, how disappointing.
I don't know. Does that count as BBC lies? It's more Met Office lies.
Yeah.
Really, isn't it? But yeah.
Well, yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's definitely lies on the BBC.
But yeah, and lastly, the one thing that I didn't realise was connected. So Black Monday, the stock market crash, that took place on the following Monday. So it took place on Monday the 19th of October. And they reckon that it was made worse in the UK because all the city traders clocked off early on the Friday and then over the weekend were spending too much time sorting out all of their damage in their gardens and whatever. And so they didn't respond to what was happening in Wall Street as efficiently as they would have done if it was a normal weekend. So there's a theory that the storm made Black Monday a worse economic event in the UK than it would have been, which I thought was quite interesting. Oh, and also, apparently, I remember Vic Reeves saying that his kitchen table is made of one of the seven oaks that fell over.
Is that right?
Yeah, so he claims, yeah.
Well, he's a known liar, but that is a pretty good claim, though.
It is, isn't it? And it sort of sounds like probably something a bit dodgy going on there, isn't it? I reckon that those seven oaks probably would have some sort of... If you've named your town after something, it seems a bit weird that somebody should just be able to just chop it up and turn it into furniture, really.
I 100% agree. I'm shocked that they're not kind of treated like, the Elgin marbles or something like that. And they're kind of, actually, is it Alton Towers where they have that ride where in the centre of the room there's this oak tree that's tethered, chained to, in the middle of the room. It's like, I'm surprised that they're not locked down. But then again, like, if anyone's going to kind of get drunk, drive to Seven Oaks, steal some wood and turn it into a table. I mean, Vic Reeves does sound like exactly the kind of person who would do that.
Yeah, no, you're right. But yeah, so that's the Great Storm. So, and one thing is noticeable in this program is they do mention how bad the weather is outside the studio.
They do. That's a wonderful moment.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, how little they knew. How little they knew. And I mean, they don't normally mention the weather either, do they? When they present it. So that's quite interesting, I thought.
Though in an episode where Howard's on the roof, he does mention that it's cold.
Oh yeah.
But it's only because it's late at night. It's the winter. No, they very rarely mention the weather. So yeah, I thought that was definitely amusing because it's right at the intro? Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of which, shall we have a look at it?
Bingo.
evening and welcome to a rather damp television centre. Now, that car that's just pulling in behind me is really rather special. And it's special because if you tried to steal it, it would make a public announcement. More about that later on. Also tonight, how the bacteria which live around your nose will be helping police with their inquiries.
We'll find out why in the tea break of the future we could be asking 1 lump or 2.
And as I promised you last week, I've been down to the West Country to see how shellfish are involved in a clean-up campaign. Right, I'm getting back in the dry now. I'll leave you with Howard in the warmer climes of America.
Well, nothing to report on the old opening credits there, Mark.
No, relax, everyone. Relax. Don't worry about it. I got you this week. No, absolutely nothing. No. Same as they ever were. Brilliant.
But fun little intro there. I feel like this is one of the earliest times we've seen them do an intro like this. Like they normally just in the 80s ones just go straight into the first segment.
They do, yes.
But yeah, it's noticeable that there's no music. It's quite a quiet intro. Maggie's standing in the car park with an umbrella.
You can't see the rain, but you can hear it, like the little gentle tip and taps on her umbrella. Yeah, and she's just standing in the BBC TV Centre car park with the main studio behind her with a famous sign complaining about the weather. Yeah, absolutely. It's just what it is. It's just a delicate little tease of what's coming up on the show.
My favourite bit is right at the end there, where she gallops off the screen.
She does. Like she's standing stock still in the middle of the show. It's like she's being yanked off in that kind of vaudeville style with a hook.
Yeah.
She even makes a face. Like she just kind of leaps, gazelle-like off the screen, flailing arms. It's quite astonishing, and because it has no connection to anything else.
No, do you think it's because the first segment's about horses? Is that what it is? Is it like is she galloping off like a horse?
Oh gosh. Oh, I think you're giving her more than a helping hand there, Russ. I think you're very generous. Oh, we're gonna have trouble this week, aren't we? No, I don't.
Oh, right. Okay, well, shall we have a look at these horses anyway?
Yeah.
Horse racing may be the sport of kings in Britain, though it's America that's long led the field with the biggest prizes and the most successful jockeys. But recently, news began to filter into tomorrow's world of a new breed of American super jockey. Tough, wiry riders with nerves of steel, trained to pursue just one objective: to win. If it wasn't for the stables, Sedalia would be a one-horse town. But it's here, hidden away in the Missouri countryside, that America's new racing elite is being prepared. Horses specially bred and trained, the riders nameless and mysterious. Well, they said they'd meet me in here somewhere. Robots. Iron-willed and cloned to perfection. 10 kilos of servo mechanisms, springs and fiberglass. The ponies are rather special too. They're called hackneys, and they have all the powerful and sleek lines of a racing horse because they came from thoroughbred racing stock to be used as ladies' carriage horses. But being so small recently, they've only made show horses. Until that is, they teamed up with trainer and tin jockey to create a new racing machine. The pint-sized riders all sit on proper saddles, their arms controlling the reins and with a crop at the back to urge the horse along. To avoid any chance of injury to the horse, elastic sections in the reins allow it to override any movement. The jockeys are totally geared to winning, but their minds are always elsewhere. A human trainer controlling robot and horse in perfect harmony. It's conventional radio control, but to add a touch of realism, the trainer can also talk to the horse through a speaker inside the jockey's head. Add a few thousand people and a touch of American razzmatazz, and you've got all the ingredients for a robot derby.
You ever ridden a horse, Mark?
Yes, I have. Yeah. I learned to ride a horse when we came over to England.
Oh, really?
Oh, I think my parents were very eager for me to fit in with the natives. So yes, I have. Yeah, it was quite good.
Yeah.
I had I had the helmet and the boots and the crop and everything.
Oh wow! I've never ridden a horse myself.
Interesting. Are you the first generation of your family never ridden a horse?
I always wonder, like a zebra, right? A zebra's a horse, isn't it? Basically, it's just a stripy
Yes.
horse. Could you
Yes.
Could you train a zebra to? Could you ride a zebra?
My understanding about the zebra is that their please email in and correct me if I'm wrong. It's like their spine is not capable of being ridden. Basically,
Oh, really?
is what it comes down to. Ostensibly, you could train it. Like I don't know why they don't turn zebras into kind of carriage horses. Kind of pulling. Can you imagine pulling the king's carriage towards this coronation of a fleet of zebras? And that's a braggadocious move, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, I think there's something to do with their spine. Is like it's just not. Basically they haven't been bred to take weight in that way.
Oh, that's a shame. That is a shame.
Yeah, that's kind of my vague memory of why you can't ride a zebra.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
But
But yeah, well, this is our second foray that we've ever done into horse racing, isn't it?
It is.
Previous time was in the worst ever episode of all time.
Oh yeah.
But this is actually quite fun segment, isn't it? It's these robot jockeys are quite fun looking little design, aren't they?
Oh god, yeah. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. I mean, part of the reason it's fun is that no one's questioning the morality of anything that's anyone or any action that's happening here, which is not true of the segment 14 years later, whenever it was. Yeah, God, no. I mean, I've got a bone to pick with some of the concepts in this, but like the robot jockeys are fantastic, and the reveal of them I think is brilliant. Because I was saying, like, is anyone else watching this, and if you're listening at home, you'd have heard the kind of the thriller style soundtrack enter as kind of Howard starts kind of anxiously skulking around the stables, pawing at doors, looking into the dark, trying to find out where this meeting point is. It only just dawned on me, it's like stables are a much used location in films and TV for murders. Almost in a way that how many people listening or just in general have ever been to stables, and yet the only thing you pick up from TV shows are that they are absolute slaughterhouses for people. It's incredible. It's like they are such. Even the other, like last year, we were watching the last series of Westworld, and somebody's killed in a stables. Even in the far distant future, people are still being slaughtered in stables. It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
What is it about the
you are
stable
right.
that kind of just draws. It's just astonishing. So yeah, he's pawing around and he opens his door, and then you see. I just want to describe a room of faceless, armless, flailing robot automatons, just kind of, just slowly. I don't know. It is. I laughed out loud the first time I saw it.
How do you reckon because they're remote controlled, yeah? But
I think they have 19 remote controls. Just
I was going to say, did they?
I was
or do they have display? Do they have display mode
Display-
where they just
display mode.
where they just go into? I do have a bit of a bone to pick with the design there though, because they've got they're sort of molded plastic,
Yes.
fiberglass or whatever. But they're molded they're quite cartoony, but they're molded to look like they've got their hands on reins in front of
Yes.
them. But then actually they've
Yes.
also got separate robot arms, which are the actual arms
They
attach the actual reins to.
Yeah.
I think it would be better for those to be molded plastic arms without the hands in front of them, if you see what I mean. They should have just put a mold over the ones that actually move.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
If you're gonna do it, go all the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
My issue is that I think they are fundamentally missold. He keeps saying robot, but ultimately what we have in this segment, which by the way I still think is kind of cool, we are looking at remote controlled horses. I think Howard is trying to sell us the idea that somehow these devices that get strapped to the saddle of a horse are able to themselves to control a horse and almost Tron-like strategize the route through, servos going off at a million times a second, strategizing the best route through the horses, able to see, they're going so fast that it feels like slow motion, and it's not, because we cut to a really nerdy guy in a satin jacket with a remote control attached to it, and he's controlling the horse. And initially, when we see the horse being remote controlled, it's actually quite incredible. Like the horse is turning on a sixpence, and which is the name of one of the horses I used to ride, Sixpence. So you know there, Russ. And which is a proper horse name, isn't it? You'd never call a dog or a cat Sixpence, but I don't know, it just suits a horse.
Sixpence none. What did Sixpence none the richer sing?
Kiss Me.
Oh yeah.
You see them turn around the corner. So it is, to me, devastatingly disappointing when it turns out the horses are just made to ride on an oval track, which I assume requires very little control at all from the remote controller.
Although I guess
I don't know.
There must be something about horses that they need to have somebody on them for them to stay racing, because obviously whenever you watch the Grand National and somebody falls off their horse, sometimes the horse carries on with the pack, but quite often it just buggers off, doesn't it? So there must
Usually
they can't be like, but obviously dogs will just chase the hare, so you don't need to have a little person on them. But there seems to be something about horses where they're a bit more independently minded when they've not got somebody sitting on them.
I did wonder if you could have like a giant fake carrot or sugar cube on an arm on a track and see if the horses chase that.
I wonder, maybe
that seems like no different to a hare.
They're not hunters though, are they? So maybe, I mean, they're not used to hunting a carrot.
No, true.
Yeah,
I don't know. It sounds like they're not trained hard enough. Give them something. Give them like a revenge mission. Kidnap their foals and then train them to kill, and then you got a sport of kings, don't you?
I guess maybe the reason why he associates stables with murder so much is because there's a lot of mafia connections, isn't there? Organised crime.
Pie oh my.
Yeah, Pie oh my and the Sopranos.
Yeah, they like to own them and they like to get involved in. Yeah, you're probably that's
obviously
true.
Famously, The Godfather. He's got a.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
maybe.
There's a really good Columbo where Norm from Cheers is the murderer, and he's some sort of gangster who owns a horse farm. Stud. They're called Stud Farm.
Stud Farm. Yeah.
But
that's the thing about horses, isn't it? Like we try and hide that they're bred animals by using different terms. Like they don't live in farms. They live in stables. Yeah. Horse farm. Where are you going? I'm going to the horse farm. I just imagine just like it's a glue factory. It's a horse farm.
Yeah. It looks from this. It looks like it's a super successful. Like there's this packed, crowded racetrack.
Yeah. All
the fanfare. There's cheerleaders. All sorts. Actually, like looks like they've really taken off this new.
Well, Howard says the robot racing craze is spreading rapidly across America. So I'm expecting you to tell me that it's a complete success. it's bearing in mind, neither of us ever heard of this. I'm assuming it's an underground success. And I was saying to you, we were in Memphis, Tennessee about 3 months ago, and I don't remember seeing an indoor arena, mini horse racing stadium.
There's not a huge sign as you drive in on the freeway saying "Welcome to Memphis, Tennessee, home of the Robo-jockeys."
No, there wasn't. No. I mean, unless it was behind all the Elvis signs.
Yeah. Well, no. Funny enough, Mark, it turns out that this was not a success.
I'm shocked.
You'd be shocked to
I am.
see.
I'm shocked, Russ. I might have to take a break.
It's quite an interesting little story. There's a man called Charlie McVean, and he's one of these sort of, in America they quite often have rich people who are a little bit earn their money in business but are a little bit eccentric, local characters. He's known as Memphis Charlie, and he owned a ranch in just south of Kansas City, a massive 10,000 acre cattle ranch. And he was fed up with people trying to nick his cattle, so he asked the manager of his ranch to come up with.
I would have thought of anyone you would know that it's called Russell.
I don't want to confuse myself, Mark.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. I suppose whenever you're near cattle, strictly speaking, they're rustled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm rustling all the time. But yeah, so
his
manager of his ranch was a bloke called Dave Kime, and he said, "Dave, what can we do to stop these cattle rustlers?" So Dave came up with the idea of a robot cowboy to patrol the fence line of the ranch. I mean, I don't know how blind or stupid cattle rustlers are, but that was the idea, was that they would see the robot cowboy and assume it was a human and not attempt to rustle the cows. But as soon as old Memphis Charlie saw the robot jockey, dollar signs pinged in his eyeballs, and light bulb went off above his head, and he realised that he could make a fleet of these and turn them into like a new type of horse racing. So he invested.
Do you have any idea if the robot cowboy, did it look more or less convincing? Than
You'd
the
have to be a little
five
bit taller,
unconvincing jockeys?
a little bit taller, and put a cowboy hat on it. Surely,
Yeah.
I would assume.
Put a cowboy hat. Yeah, that's it. Actually, that's all they did. They put a cowboy hat.
And
on it, yeah.
a Marlboro in its mouth.
Well, I mean, those arms do kind of go like the famous sign in Times Square.
Oh yeah. But yeah, so he invested. So old Memphis Charlie invested $2 million in the idea. Got all these robots built. And he had a racetrack in Memphis, that indoor racetrack which he was going to use. But interestingly, and this must have been connected in some way, gambling on horses had been illegal in Memphis since 1905. It had been made illegal then. And it was only in 1987, with a lot of lobbying from both Memphis Charlie and another fella who wanted to start a proper horse racetrack. They were lobbying for the law to be changed. And it was in 1987 that the law was changed and they were allowed to start gambling on horses again in Memphis. Unfortunately, they refused to give a license to Memphis Charlie for his robot jockeys. They would only give a license to the fellow with the real horses. So Memphis Charlie tried a couple of times and failed. Took it to appeal and failed. And in fact, he even tried to bribe a senator, for which he went to court for in 1990, and somehow got off, presumably because he's rich. So in the end, the old robot jockeying fell by the wayside. Because it could never get a license. They could never launch it.
So, to the best of your knowledge, with the research you've done, it was only the one venue.
Yeah, he was only trying to get it done in Memphis. So I'm
going to repeat what Howard said earlier. The robot racing craze is spreading rapidly across America. What is that based on?
Absolutely nothing.
My God! Do your due diligence. I assume Memphis Charlie whispered that in his ear. I mean,
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure Memphis Charlie had plans.
Oh, I'm sure he had plans,
but fell at the first fence, as it were. So, interestingly, I don't really notice. This is a bit of local knowledge for you, Mark. They were using miniature racehorses for this. They look just like a racehorse, don't they? But it's kind of weirdly small.
They do. Yes.
That horse is called a hackney pony, Mark.
He called it a hackney pony, yeah. I've never heard of a hackney pony.
And it's a smaller version of a hackney horse. And do you know why it's called a hackney horse, Mark?
Because it used to deliver stuff into London?
Because it used to be the horse used to tow hackney carriages. Yes.
Carriages, yeah. Gotcha.
So there you go. That's a little bit of local trivia for you to tell everyone in your
tell everyone, yeah,
in your borough.
I'm gonna run into work tomorrow like Charlie Bucket at the start of the film, just eager to tell everyone about my. I'd never heard of a hackney pony before.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of a hackney. I've never heard of hackney carriages, but I'm going to be honest with you. I assumed a hackney carriage was pulled by any horse that a taxi driver could get their hands on. Their grubby hands.
But the hackney pony was like super fashionable in the 19th century. It was the horse to have if you were, it's kind of like the two-seater sports car of horses in the 19th century.
The one we see is very elegant looking. It's a really beautiful looking horse, and it is clearly small, but it is kind of wonderfully proportional. Like it, as you said, it's the old Father Ted joke, isn't it? It just looks like it's far away.
Yeah, it really does. But so old Memphis Charlie, he's no longer with us. He died in 2021, age 78. His big legacy.
Wait, sorry. Did you say 78?
Yes.
So when this came out, like he was in his 40s, basically. I would have put money on him being like in his 70s when this happened.
No, he's only in his early 40s.
That's amazing. God, he was quite a character. I just wonder why didn't he try and set this up literally anywhere else where he could legally do this?
Because he's Memphis Charlie.
Well, I know, I get that, but Memphis is right on the edge of Tennessee. You could easily just go left and maybe go into the next
Kentucky,
state,
maybe.
Kentucky, famous for its goddamn horses.
But obviously, big proponent for Memphis, and so his lasting legacy is that. When you're in Memphis, as you were recently, there's that big, ugly iron bridge that goes across the Mississippi.
Yes.
Obviously, when that was originally built, it was only for cars because Americans don't believe anybody could possibly ever want to walk anywhere. And Memphis Charlie started a campaign to get a pedestrian walkway bolted onto it, and that's what he did. So that was opened in 2016, called the Big River Crossing. So now you can cross the Mississippi by foot, all thanks to Memphis Charlie.
What a legacy!
Yeah. So and he also invested in electric bicycles long before anybody else did, but too early. He was one of those people that people sometimes sometimes try and do
Yes.
something a little bit too early. Yeah, he's one
Yeah.
of those. But anyway, yeah, robot jockeys. I mean, I immediately thought of the camel racing that they do in the Middle
Yes.
East. Famously, they use robot jockeys for that. And the reason they use robot jockeys for that is because prior to that, they would kidnap 4-year-old boys, starve them, and use them as the jockeys. Which even the governments of that region, who are not necessarily the most sort of liberally minded,
Humane?
humane, humane.
Yeah.
Even they thought that was a bit strong. So Qatar was the first government to ban human jockeys on camels, and they were the ones that initiated a robot.
We were one of the first countries to ban it. Sorry.
yeah.
I can't believe. Have we banned it? Are we that bad that we've not banned kidnapping kids to ride?
Starved 4-year-olds. Yeah.
Oh my god. How are we supposed to judge these people?
But so they started a robot jockey development program, and they got Swiss robotics lab to come up with a robot jockey for a camel, and they did, but it was basically they decided it was too heavy, far heavier than a starved 4-year-old kidnapped boy. And also a little bit too complicated, so it didn't survive in the desert environment. So instead,
they would get wrong because of the sound.
They got some local people on it, and I've put at the bottom of our notes a picture of a fleet of their so-called robot jockeys. And if you look at that,
so cool.
if you look at that picture closely, Mark, you'll notice that actually what it is, it's a tube and a frame with a Makita power drill stuck in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And that's all it is.
Just whip the backside of the.
And so
Oh my god!
So they just attach like a whip or whatever to the spinny bit of the drill, and that is it.
There's no steering; it's just whipping. Jesus Christ! They really commit to abusing.
Yeah,
they really commit to their abuse. Gosh. I assumed it was a robot jockey thing when I saw the picture, but I deliberately didn't zoom in. And I thought, no, I'll wait, I'll hold off. And then the second I did, it's like, initially when I saw the picture, because it was quite far off, I thought, oh, they look quite sophisticated. This must be the future of robot jockey. And it's only when you asked me to look at it, I go, oh my god, it's just drills and tiny Zimmer frames. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, ingenuity.
Exactly. Well, that's robot jockeys.
So I hope Kate Humble doesn't listen to this episode.
Oh yeah, she'd be furious.
Be retrospectively livid.
Bizarre. Now, one of our viewers has highlighted what could be a new era in the nuisance call. Mr. Tuckett in Bristol has received over 70 calls, and they're all from a caller who talks like this. It's a new phenomenon, the computer nuisance call.
At night, Britain's phone lines are buzzing with hundreds of thousands of calls as computers phone each other up. From shops, banks and businesses all over the country, computers automatically phone their head offices. And one of them seemed to be trying to transfer its data about the day's transactions to Mr. Tuckett.
So Mr. Tuckett took his problem to British Telecom. And this summer, after 6 months, they told him they couldn't trace the calls. The only solution was to change his telephone number. But Mr. Tuckett has had his number for 17 years and he didn't want a new one. So a few weeks ago, when we heard about the problem, we decided to have a go at tracking down the mysterious caller ourselves.
The plan was masterful in its simplicity. We tried all the numbers in Britain which are only one digit different from Mr. Tuckett's. And sure enough, on one of those numbers, we heard the telltale bleeps. The line is one of several owned by Gateway supermarkets. Their automatic security system gets calls constantly from nearly 1,000 branches, alerting them to fires, break-ins, or even when a freezer runs a little warm. So it looked as if Mr. Tuckett's calls were actually alarms from a Gateway store. Gateway were naturally keen to find out and installed a computer in Mr. Tuckett's house to answer the phone and talk to the mystery computer next time it called. Well, quite a few calls arrived, but the lines were too noisy for the caller to be identified. Until, finally, they got an unambiguous printout. The code told them that the call had indeed come from a Gateway store in Cranbrook in Kent.
So Gateway examined all the equipment in Cranbrook. They took out the chip, which stores the telephone number, which the computer dials automatically when any alarm goes off. And here is that chip. But there's nothing wrong with it, or the numbers it had stored. Nor could Gateway find anything wrong with the rest of the equipment. But they replaced it anyway, and curiously enough, Mr. Tuckett hasn't had any computer calls since.
So at least for the moment, we've got a very happy Mr. Tuckett. But presumably, we thought, Mr. Tuckett can't be the only victim of a rogue computer. British Telecom said they hadn't heard of any other complaints, and Oftel, BT's watchdog, hadn't even heard of the problem. But in just a few days of checking, we've discovered several other similar cases. And with the amount of nighttime computer chit-chat increasing at over 20% a year, it's a problem that we're likely to hear a lot more about.
While watching that there this time, Mark, I was just wondering, Mr. Tuckett, do you think he's got any grandchildren? And if he has got grandchildren, do you think they refer to his wife as Nan Tuckett?
I fear Mr. Tuckett might be a bachelor, Russ.
Do you think?
I do, because for those listening on the podcast and not watching on YouTube, weirdly, so this kind of weird That's Life Watchdog segment is illustrated with pictures of who we assume to be Mr. Tuckett. Could be an actor, but still photos of Mr. Tuckett. You see him initially. Is he in bed? Is he in his pajamas in bed?
He is, yes. He's in his pajamas in bed, yeah.
And then I remember first thinking, so the first time I saw that, I was like, oh, that's a weird way of illustrating someone getting annoying computer chit-chat phone calls. But there's another 2 or 3 photos in the sequence of him, like, getting agitated. And the thing is, Russ, I don't see any evidence of a Mrs. Tuckett. I'd need to give a closer examination that you've asked this question. I don't remember a ring. I don't remember any kind of feminine touches. There's no one else in the bedroom except the photographer.
Well, maybe she's taking the picture. Mrs. Tuckett might be taking the pictures.
Oh, that's it. Nan Tuckett is taking the pictures, yeah? Oh, thank God for that. All right, great. Yeah, no, in that case, yeah, definitely have kids.
Incidentally, Mark, I actually did check the Bristol phone book to see if I could find find any Tuckets in. I wasn't entirely sure how to spell Tuckett, but I tried a few different spellings of Tuckett. Couldn't find anybody in the Bristol phone book. So I'm fearful that he's no longer with us 35 years later.
Or he's just left Bristol, Russ.
Oh yeah, that might be.
Yeah, like his ambitions might have gone beyond the borders of the Bristol city.
He's fed up with all the nuisance phone calls he kept getting. So
yeah, damn right. Maybe he moved to Cranbrook. Maybe he saw that as a calling.
Oh yeah. Actually, Cranbrook is a very nice place, isn't it, Mark? Not too far from.
Nice, yeah.
Not too far from where we're from. Did we know anybody from Cranbrook?
It was lovely.
I don't think I know anything.
I couldn't think of anyone offhand. I'd only been to Cranbrook a few times, but I remember it being nice. I did have a look at Street View to see if we could see the gateway.
So did I.
Oh yeah, I
spent about half an hour driving up and down the high street in the adjoining streets.
I think I might have spent 5 minutes.
I couldn't believe I couldn't find it. I assumed it'd be on the high street.
I saw a co-op on the map. I thought, oh, it's definitely the co-op.
Oh.
You know, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to change planning conditions on a building. So if it's a B123, it's got basically kind of has to stay a B123. Like it has to be a shop, you know, or a financial. That's why a lot of banks closed and they were taken over by betting places because they were licensed. Because believe it or not, but you know, betting shops are in the same planning bracket as banks. So they were seen as like, oh, well, that's basically the same thing. Yeah. So you can open your I was actually incredibly disappointed not to find, but I didn't spend half an hour driving through Cranbrook like you. I thought it would be really easy.
I know the place like the back of my hand now, Mark.
And you didn't see Mr. Tuckett in all those journeys up and down.
No, but yeah, no. Gateway, Mark. I remember there was a Gateway in my local town, Edenbridge, when I was growing up. Gateway food markets, and I assumed that it had been taken over by Summerfield because they all turned into Summerfields, didn't they? But actually, no,
they did.
It's actually all that happened is that the Gateway was originally a West Country. It started in Bristol. The actual company, like the supermarket, started in. Presumably that's why it was ringing Bristol, because that's where the headquarters is, maybe. But yeah, it was a mainly West Country based chain, and then they opened a branch in Somerset, which they decided to call Summerfield rather than Gateway for unknown reasons. And it was such a success that they decided to just rename all of the Gateway stores Summerfield in 1994. And so it wasn't taken over at all. It just changed its name.
Oh gosh, what a weird thing.
And obviously subsequently taken over by the Co-op back in 2008. Yes. As we all remember that happening.
That's why I thought when I saw there was a Co-op in Cranbrook, I thought, well, that's got to be it. There's got to be it. Problem solved. Mystery solved. Easiest case to crack ever.
But I did.
Our combined minds couldn't track it down.
In the course of my research, hang on, let me get this up. In the course of my research, I found a YouTube video entitled "This is why Gateway doesn't exist anymore."
Gateway have cut over 1,000 prices, from Pepsi Cola to pack cheese slices to powdered bananas, 25p, I'm glad these savings are easy to see.
Top side of beef is down 80 pence. Savings like this make a lot of sense.
Over 1,000 price cuts, fresh milk to quavers. Price check savings are super savers.
Thank goodness for Gateway.
It's good, isn't it?
Wow, that is. You need to send that link to me. Gosh, this is what I get. Wow, well, I mean, gosh, okay. I can see why they changed it to Summerfield. I understand now. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
This is badass gangster rap, says the comment underneath. Damn, these beats are fresh. The comment underneath. Also noticeable, I don't really recognise that the lady, the main lady in that advert, was the actress Sue Devaney, who played Johnny Briggs's sister, and was also in Spats. You remember that?
Okay. No, I did not.
That delightful half Canadian children's ITV comedy show.
That was hilarious, wasn't it?
It's quite an odd segment, isn't it? In that it's not really. I wouldn't call it a Tomorrow's World segment. It's kind of I can see why they've included it, because it's about how the progress of technology has created some other issue. But the way they're going about it is very un-Tomorrow's World, in that it's basically doing. I
find that dynamic between the two presenters to be very That's Life. The way they hand off to each other. And Macann especially seems to have a little twinkle in his eye. But ultimately it's kind of a watchdog thing, because Mr. Tucker has been let down by both BT and Oftel. One of them has never heard of this problem and the other can't solve it.
And also, I mean, BT couldn't trace the call. That is such cobblers, isn't it?
Utter cobblers. And at one point, Macann says, like, BT reported the line was too noisy, so they couldn't work out. What the fudge does that mean? I think I asked you when they said it. I said, what does that mean? The lines was when he was receiving his call, the line was too noisy. I don't understand. No, I mean that is absolute tosh. I can only assume that this is obviously what BT told Mr. Tuckett until they learned that the BBC were getting involved. At which point, they pulled out all the stops. By the way, well done to Gateway for installing what I assume is the first Gateway computer in a home, so that to answer the phone and kind of try and work out what it was. It's weird that didn't work either. No, it's actually, to be fair to Mr. Tuckett, he might have come across like a crank, but he had a genuine problem and he was grossly let down. So well done, Tomorrow's World, for stepping in. But it is a very un-Tomorrow's World segment.
How do you think the news of Mr. Tuckett got to Tomorrow's World? Do you think...
That's a good question. You asked that. I don't know.
Do you think maybe he wrote into... Did he specifically...
That's Life or Watchdog, and then they just
palmed it onto Tomorrow's World? I don't know.
A computer thing? I was going to say, like, he's a mature gentleman. I don't know what his experience... Like you and I would recognise a computer on the end of a line trying to dial up into something, right? Did Mr. Tuckett know that it was a computer trying to dial? Or did he think it was like a Russian sleeper cell trying to activate an assassin? I don't know. I don't know how it got to Tomorrow's World. Actually, your idea of maybe he wrote to someone else and it was discussed at some meeting, and maybe Tomorrow's World were like, oh, well, let us have a look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, maybe that makes sense, actually. I don't know. It's a good question, because at no point did they say, if you have any similar issues, please write into, Tomorrow's World, Wood Lane, BBC Television Centre, etc. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. But then, because equally it strikes me that, like, the whole kind of still image to illustrate Mr. Tuckett's frustrations feels very That's Life as well. So maybe it was almost like, maybe they finished it off and thought, nah, it's actually cool. Because it would be quite boring for That's Life, wouldn't it? The ending is quite boring.
Yeah. No, and also, then they say they subsequently found several more cases of this happening to other people.
Yes, they have.
How do they do that?
I don't.
How do you find? How do you find out? How do you sort of canvass a large number of people before the internet? I don't know how they did that.
God, do you think they're lying?
Do you think it's a lie?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Do you think it's a lie?
No.
Are you sure?
I was thinking, because at one point Macann says that they, in order to track down the Gateway computer, they phoned every phone number in Britain that was one digit different to Mr. Tuckett's phone number. And I thought, my God, that must be thousands. But then actually worked out. But the Bristol phone number was 10 digits then. And if the first digit is always 0, then actually there was just 90. Just 90 phone numbers I had to dial. And even then that would be only if they got the correct one on the last number, which is unlikely. Yeah. So
that was one of those things where I thought, actually when I thought about it, I was like, oh no, that's actually just a really sensible way of trying to break it down. Because you would get there within 20 minutes. You'd have to have a lot of awkward conversations, though, I'm sure. Because remember, kids, back then people used to answer their phones when they were cold called.
Yeah. Well, like Mr. Tuckett has been doing. I mean, but yeah, I mean, there's not much I can really. I mean, we've got the internet now, Mark, so this doesn't happen.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know whether maybe there is, there might be some business that's still got some ancient legacy system that still requires this to happen, but I mean, there's no way of me finding that out. But yeah, with it just goes to the internet now. It did remind me though of the fact that the first time I ever attempted to use the internet was around my friend Paul Marshall's house. He'd got a new computer with a modem in it, but obviously we didn't know how to use the internet or what the internet was. And the only other person we knew,
what did you do?
The only other person we knew who had a modem on their computer was occasional listener Matt Birch. And so we just tried dialing his phone number with Paul's modem, which obviously is not how the internet works, Mark. I don't know whether you know this. You just dial people's phone numbers with them. And I remember going to school the next day, and apparently we'd sent his fax machine absolutely bananas, and his dog was barking and everything. It was a yeah, that was the first ever attempt at using the internet.
Times.
Yeah.
Well, you've made up for it since then, haven't you? You dirty beggar. Didn't look back, did you?
Afraid so. Now it's over to Howard, who should be outside. Are you getting wet out there?
It is teeming down out here, Judith. I definitely got the short straw this week. Well, now for a problem you'd think that couldn't get much worse. Every day, cars get stolen, and amazingly enough, some people still leave their car doors open. And that is asking for the car to get nicked. This is quite plush, isn't it? Oh, a few bob for this down the East End. Now, as I pull out of this, just keep your eyes on the nameplate. Pretty good, huh? Now, normally, the nameplate is held up by two electromagnets here and here. But when the alarm system's switched on, it reduces the power to the electromagnets to a very low level. So the number plate is just hanging on. And then if a thief goes over a pothole or brakes suddenly, down comes the plate and off goes the alarm. And there's more, because if you thought you could just put it back up, you're in even more trouble. Well, luckily, I have the key for this situation, so I'll just switch it off. There we go. And now, with it deactivated, it returns full power to those electromagnets. Look at that. That won't shift. I'm sure it wouldn't come off even if you went full tilt round Shepherd's Bush backwards. Well, now back inside to a very warm and dry Peter.
Now, we've had some rubbish inventions on this programme.
Yeah.
This has got to be well up there with one of the absolute worst things we've ever had on
Absolute rot.
How did they even get past the drawing board stage? You could just think of...
Are you talking about the invention?
Yeah,
or you could inclusion of the show.
I mean, it's quite fun to have it in the show, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean,
it feels time.
I think everything that Howard presents on this episode is something a bit silly, isn't it? I've just realised.
Yes, yeah.
But this is the silliest.
Right, actually, yeah.
I mean, but why did nobody just say to the inventors of this, what happens if they just tape the number plate up?
Well, that was my first question to you. Is like, what is stopping thieves going around taping up license plates across Britain?
Yeah.
Because this is really stupid. This is really stupid. I mean, this is really stupid. And Howard, God bless his tiny soul, he's really game and really selling it. He seems so excited about this. Is so stupid. So ridiculous, such a ridiculous, gimmicky bit of it's. And you know what? Actually, it is bizarre that it is not the trashiest, gimmickiest thing on this episode.
It's just
it is so stupid.
It is. Yeah, it's completely, and it seems to be reliant on the fact that the car thief will definitely reverse at high speed and then slam the brakes on.
Yes.
That's the first thing that it needs to do, assuming that they haven't just sellotaped it up.
Sellotaped it, yeah.
Yeah, and then for some reason, if they go round the back and then flip the number plate up, it makes the tone of the alarm change, which, according to Howard, means they're in even more trouble. Why? Well, why is that? Why is it more trouble if the tone of the alarm changes?
I don't know why that's a... Also, like, the tone of the alarm doesn't change so much as it's the actual car alarm.
So why does that just go off first?
The license plate and the actual car alarm. Why doesn't that just go off first?
Yeah.
I genuinely, at one point, I thought it was going to be like that bit in Phoenix Nights where the two bouncers, one of them has a new alarm installed in his car where he can record a message and it's just over and over goes, "Get back, you bastards." And I thought, oh, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's going to be like a voice, a voice screaming, like, oh, my car's being stolen. No, it goes from a high-pitched noise, which, frankly, if you're out on the road, I don't think you'd notice all that much, to an actual car alarm. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's actually annoying.
But I think there was a good bit of Howard material there. I don't know whether you heard. I didn't hear it the first time I was watching this, but about the third time I watched it, I did hear it. When Howard gets in the car, he's quite muffled, but you hear him say, "Oh, this is quite plush, isn't it? I'll get a few bob for this down the estate."
I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
And of course, we know which estate because it's the only one they go to in Tomorrow's World.
Yeah. I thought that was good.
No,
although he does make a bit of a gaffe when he comes out because he calls it a nameplate rather than a number plate.
To be fair, my issue with this segment is not Howard. Howard, as always, is being powerfully game, but it's so stupid. Because at least his next segment, when he talks about something stupid, is a bit of throwaway frippery.
Yeah.
Like with this one, I think it is throwaway frippery, but they're trying to pretend this actually might be useful.
Yeah.
Not least because Maggie starts off in the car park talking about the car coming in. She says, "Oh, this car coming in. Keep an eye on this car coming in because we're going to show you something really cool about
I did like the three cars there. They slightly reminded me of the old.
Do you know what? Sorry, Ross. Just to interrupt you, before you even saw that, I was about to say, "Go on, Ross. Tell us about the three cars."
Well, they reminded me of that famous sketch with John Cleese, Ronnie Barker, and Ronnie Corbett.
I look up to you, but I look down on him. Yes.
Yeah, it's a shame that they didn't have they should have had the cars the other way round though, which that didn't quite work because the crap car's in the middle in this case. You got the manager's car, the secretary's car, and then the flash Italian sports car, the red sports car. That's one of the talent's cars. Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. That's Howard's car, and he puts on his full Fila outfit, and he just drives around the streets of Shepherd's Bush, tearing it up.
Yeah. Actually, speaking of Howard's outfit, that's quite an interesting little combo he's wearing there, isn't he? He's got a yellow shirt, blue tie.
It's mighty powerful.
Dark blue jacket with a purple lining, sort of greeny grey slacks, and then sort of beigey grey shoes. Sort of like
the only time I've seen
pastel harlequin.
And the only time I've seen a yellow shirt is I used to work at Lakeland Limited, and that was a yellow shirt.
Oh, really?
You don't get many yellow shirts at the pound, Russ. I imagine they're very difficult to track down these days.
Mm.
No, it's a solid look. Howard not letting the slide down. One of these days we'll see Howard in a really boring outfit. That day is not today, my friend.
So, interestingly, this wasn't really a problem back then. Something that is a much larger problem these days, sort of ironically for this product, is the fact that it's number plates themselves that are stolen, rather than it's roughly the same number of number plates are stolen every year than there are cars. It's about 58,000 cars were stolen last year, and 54,000 number plates were stolen last year. Because obviously these days, because there's all of these sort of number plate recognising cameras and things like that.
Yeah.
People need to have fake number plates to bypass cameras and things like this, which obviously weren't a problem back then. Actually, if that existed these days, there would probably just be a system to prevent people from nicking the number plates rather than the car itself. Obviously, we wouldn't know anything about nicking number plates, such a mark.
I've no idea what you're talking about. I don't know why you'd say that. Apropos of what, Russ? What a tangent. Jesus, man. God's sakes.
First country to introduce a number plate was France, Paris. And the Parisian police first came up with the idea of a number plate. Then Germany followed suit 3 years later in 1896. And then, do you know who the third country to have number plates was, Mark?
Us, America, or Japan. Russ, pick one.
Netherlands. The Netherlands was the third country in the world to have number plates.
For all those yachts they invented, I suppose. Is that right?
Well, exactly, yeah. But yeah, so obviously I couldn't find. There's no way I could find this on the internet, Mark, because I doubt
this product.
Yeah, this product.
Nonsense?
No, yeah, it's nonsense. No one ever buy it. But I did find a company called speedflip.com. They have a very, very shoddy website. They sell number plates that flip down at the press of a button for novelty purposes only. But obviously, what they're actually used for is. If you're going past a speed trap or whatever, they just press the button and it flips the number plate down so the camera can't see it. Apparently, it's not illegal to fit those to your car, but it is obviously illegal to use them. So you go to speedflip.com and you can get one number plate for £165 or £250 for the pair. So anybody out there wants
to...
to...
you do front and back, don't you? Yeah.
So that's a real sort of James. You feel like James Bond.
Can you press a button to kind of immediately reveal the number plates, or is it just a kind of a?
Yeah, they flip. But yeah, they flip straight back up again. You press a button, they flip down, then press a button again, they flip back up. And apparently they've been tested up to speeds of up to 190 miles per hour, and they still work at that speed. So
Okay, so here's a question. So bearing in mind this is just for novelty purpose only, why are they testing at 190 miles an hour?
In case you want to demonstrate your novelty on the racetrack.
On a track day. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, that sounds perfectly normal behaviour.
It's a bit of a pattern with this episode in that there's quite a lot of stuff that's I've not really been able to find out much about, but I think that's probably just testament to the quality of the items they have on the episode rather than my researching skills.
That is no reflection on you whatsoever, Rose. I feel very confident saying that. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm happy to throw you under any bus any day of the week, but not this time. This is not you.
Right. Next one?
Yeah.
For more than 40 years, doctors have been successfully killing bacteria that cause everything from sore throats to typhoid with an armoury of antibiotics. But when it comes to illnesses caused by viruses, anything from flu to AIDS, drugs are not so potent. Viruses are tough to kill because they actually multiply inside the body's cells. So it's difficult to attack the virus with drugs without damaging the cells. But new ways of treating viral infections are emerging from genetic engineering. The latest idea is to reach inside cells and add special genes called antigenes to stop the invading virus in its tracks.
Every cell in every animal or plant contains a nucleus which holds the cell's genes, the DNA which carries the instructions for all the proteins made by the cell. But the proteins aren't made in the nucleus. They're manufactured by tiny structures called ribosomes. And the genetic instructions for each protein have to be carried from the nucleus out to the ribosomes. That's done by something called RNA, which is very similar to DNA. It forms on the DNA and carries the genetic code out to the ribosomes, which then make the right protein.
Now, this model represents just part of a single strand of DNA, making up several genes, and that, in fact, is just one of them. Now, when a virus attacks the cells, it inserts its own genes into the DNA. Now, as with all DNA, the genetic code of the viral gene is made up of 4 chemical units, represented here by these 4 shapes. And when the RNA is produced, it has a mirror image of that code, which interlocks perfectly. So when the RNA moves off to the ribosome, it can offer that code to produce the viral protein. But it is possible to copy that mirror image to create a man-made gene called an antigene. So how could that help? Well, that man-made gene can also be added to the DNA. And now, when the RNA from the antigene and the RNA from the virus move out to the ribosome, they too interlock, masking the code. So the ribosome has no information to read, and it can't make the viral protein.
Now, this was an absolute nightmare to Google, Mark, because it turns out that one of Alexander the Great's generals was called Antigenes, which is spelt exactly the same as antigenes.
Exactly the same, yeah.
So I had to wade through all sorts of ancient Greek history to try and track this down.
Anything you want to tell us about Antigenes?
Well, he was a very successful general, and when he got caught by the enemy, he was executed by being burnt in a pit.
Oh, that's not fun.
No. But this is the second two-hander between Hann and Macann.
Macann.
I don't know why why do you reckon they've decided to do that this week? Any particular reason why they?
Well, what we don't know is whether this is the first week they've done it. It might be that they've been doing it for a while. I look forward to finding out. I mean, one of the things I enjoy about this is I like the idea that we might be able to develop some kind of overarching universal narrative about tomorrow's world or something like that, or like and so I don't know. I don't think it doesn't work. I actually quite like it. Actually, Macann and Hann do work well together.
Yeah.
I suppose they have kind of similar levels of gravitas.
Mum and Dad.
Mum and Dad, because Maggie and Howard work together for completely different reasons.
Yeah.
Because of the kids, aren't they? Yeah, it's Mum and Dad. They have mum and dad vibes, and it works quite well. Because I mean, we've discussed in the past how Judith Hann has done the public health segments that, I mean, in general, health items bore us both to tears, but on a couple of occasions, she's done really important, powerful pieces that are designed to kind of really alleviate concerns and anxieties. And she's very good at that. And Macann, they always send abroad because, again, I think he has a kind of. I was thinking about Macann being sent abroad because we've seen him in Japan and a few other places, and I think because he conveys an idea that when he goes abroad, he's working. Whereas, like, you think about some other presenters, you can imagine people at home thinking like, oh, he's on a bloody BBC jolly, Whereas, like, you don't have that with Macann. You think like, no, he's gone there and he probably barely leaves the hotel room because he's just too busy researching stuff.
Yeah,
don't know. They have similar gravitas, and I think it works quite well. It doesn't work. It works better in the Mr. Tucker piece. Ironically, the less serious piece benefits more from them. I don't know, it's a good question. I don't know, but then equally, as I say, this may actually be something they've been doing for a while.
I mean, this is by far the most complicated segment in terms of what the concept they're trying to get across. It's quite so maybe they didn't want to shoulder one presenter with the burden of having to explain.
There's a lot of exposition here, isn't there?
Yeah, because they're basically explaining how viruses reproduce in cells, and then how this could possibly be treated. But there's some great, lovely model work in this, isn't there? There's that lovely,
fabulous models,
lovely wooden DNA track that Macann's playing with. Like, it's very tactile, isn't it? It's like a toy, like a children's toy train set or something like that. And he clacks the wood together. It's lovely. And then Judith's got this very exciting disco type cross section of a HIV virus that she's kind of, you said, looks like a forest planet.
Looks like a mini cross section of a tiny forest planet, which I found adorable.
Yeah, although she does call it the AIDS virus, which terribly unscientific, Mark, because there's no such thing as the AIDS virus.
But I got what you meant. Like, I suppose HIV, you could, it isn't the AIDS virus, but like, if she's saying that AIDS is one thing, it is the virus that leads to it. Like, it's the partner in crime. But I don't think that's what she means, unfortunately.
Did people maybe not use the term HIV back then? I don't know. Did they just call everything AIDS?
1987? Yeah, probably. I don't know. I mean, you think of the ads that they had around the time, the famous monolith kind of falling. It was all AIDS, wasn't it? But then, Mark in EastEnders, he said, I got the virus, didn't he?
Yeah. But I ain't got the disease. Did you, at school, did you ever get the one where somebody say, have you got AIDS? And you go, no. And then they go, positive. And you go, yeah. And they go, you're HIV positive. Did you ever get that one?
You and I went to the same school, Russ. No, I never got that. So you must never have tried it on me.
I remember that being quite a popular playground jibe at the time.
God, school kids are awful.
Yeah. But I mean, this segment just is what it is, isn't it? They're describing something. I think they do quite a good job. I think you come away with a pretty clear understanding of the idea behind this and how this could work. So I think it's successful in that way. That's not particularly exciting. But then again, I mean,
it's quite boring. It's effective but boring, and it's one of those ones where like they do a lot of heavy lifting for you to get the, I'm assuming, very top level view of exactly what is being promised by Antigene. I had lots of questions that will go unanswered about, especially when Macann is explaining how viruses replicate, and that model does a really good job of explaining roughly. But it's one of those things where, like, if he was explaining to me, I'd have to start asking him questions, and I would have been convinced he wouldn't have been able to answer them. So I suppose it leaves you. I felt very aware that Macann and Macann were at the very limits of their knowledge with this one, which to be fair means it's probably it's quite cutting edge. So it's probably one of those things where like, yeah, okay, cool, I'm glad I'm learning about this. This sounds quite exciting, and I'm sure I'll hear more about it in 10 years' time.
We certainly will. Well, we certainly did, because although the term antigenes never took off, another reason why I mainly got search results from ancient Greece.
Antigenes.
Yes. Actually, what they ended up calling this is antisense. There's a term in genetics where the way a DNA code is read is called the sense of it. So this is called antisense RNA or antisense oligonucleotide. this is going to be the segment where I read out the most long words that I don't know what they mean of any segment I've ever done.
Fabulous.
But they first came up with the idea in 1978, but couldn't really do anything about it at the time. But then obviously as technology went on, they got better at designing these things. And in the end, in 1998, the first ever drug that works on this principle was approved by the FDA. It was called fomiversin. And that was used to treat cytomegalovirus retinitis in immunocompromised patients. Which so it was used to treat patients with AIDS, because obviously if you've got AIDS, your immune system's compressed. The disease is not caused by AIDS. It's just that people with AIDS are likely to get it. Susceptible to it, yes.
Yeah.
And it's an inflammation of the retina that can lead to blindness. And so they injected this drug into their eyeballs, and it helped cure it. It's nice image, isn't it, Mark?
Wonderful.
But after the success of that, obviously the floodgates are opened. They now have antisense medicines for the following conditions: Batten disease, Duchenne muscular dystrophy, familial chylomicronemia syndrome, familial hypercholesterolemia, hereditary transthyretin-mediated amyloidosis, spinal muscular atrophy. Right. So all of those are now treated with this new technology, which is all good. So as of 2020, there are more than 50 clinical trials going on for all different diseases. So it's very successful. 25 of those are in the advanced stages, which means they're close to being like a commercially available medicine for treating these diseases. So I thought I'd read out a few of those diseases that they're going to treat.
Like Bob Duca kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, hereditary transthyretin-mediated amyloidosis, Huntington's disease, acromegaly, age-related macular degeneration, Alzheimer's, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, autosomal dominant retinitis pigmentosa, beta thalassemia, cardiovascular disease, elevated level of lipoprotein, centronuclear myopathy, coagulopathies, cystic fibrosis, diabetes, epidermolysis bullosa dystrophica, familial chylomicronemia syndrome, frontotemporal dementia, Fuchs dystrophy, hepatitis B, hereditary angioedema, hypertension, IgA nephropathy, Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy, multiple system atrophy, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, that's one to watch out for, Parkinson's disease, prostate cancer, Stargardt disease, STAT3 expressing cancers, and Usher syndrome.
Usher syndrome. Okay.
It makes you wear a hat.
Yeah. God, there's some famous ones in there.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
So so it sounds like it's a pretty good old bit of technology. That seems like it's genuinely doing a lot of good around the world. The one thing that Judith mentions is the possibility of using it for AIDS or HIV, which they don't, because that's mainly because the treatment they have for HIV now is so good that they just don't need to develop a new one. It's
no.
They use anti-retro
Lycentas like it used to be.
Yeah, antiretroviral drugs is what they use, which basically they sabotage the virus itself. But it works so well that's all they use these days. So they don't need to develop a new medicine for that.
Amazing, isn't it? Brilliant.
Yeah, it is amazing that something that was seen as such a huge danger, like as HIV was when we were younger, has now just been basically completely.
I think growing up, the only two things that were kind of designed to, there were two things that you were taught to be scared of: electricity pylons and AIDS. One of those now, I don't need to be so concerned. No, it genuinely is amazing actually the way it has gone from this terminal condition to it's fine.
Yeah,
you're grand. Don't worry about it. You're gonna be okay. I mean, it still has an element of the fear about it, but it's misplaced now, which is just incredible.
I'd much rather have AIDS than cancer, I reckon.
What a thing to say, but I do know what you mean. Yeah. Cancer seems much more potluck, doesn't it?
I think so. Well, anyway, on that joyful note, should we move on to the?
To be fair, Mark from EastEnders is still alive, isn't he? So I mean, what more do you need to know?
I knew it.
One way or another, the sea is ultimately on the receiving end of most of man's pollution. Chemical and sewage waste is dumped directly, whilst pesticides work their way through the ground into rivers, and industrial fumes can fall again in rain. However, that may seem like a mere drop in the vast oceans of the world, so no one has ever attempted to measure it globally. But that is exactly what's being planned here in Plymouth. Marine biologists needed a universal measure of pollution, which would provide them with worldwide data over a number of years, which would allow them to make a scientific analysis of results. And their choice was the humble mussel. The common marine mussel lives on virtually every coastline in the world, and it has the extraordinary ability of being able to absorb pollution without being killed by it. Over their 10 to 15-year lifetime, they will literally soak up pollution like a sponge, which, although it doesn't kill them, will produce detectable changes. So from 1988 onwards, the mussels of the world will be starring in the scientific programme modestly called Global Mussel Watch. It's the Institute for Marine Environmental Research in Plymouth that's masterminding the project in laboratories specially equipped to study mussels. Mussels like these have already proved their ability to monitor pollution in one-off investigations, such as in estuaries outside sewerage works. But for Global Mussel Watch, a series of very sensitive tests have been developed, which will pick up even the slightest level of contamination.
The thing that annoys me about shellfish, shellfish being served in restaurants, right? The shells of shellfish are not edible, right?
No.
So why is it more often than not, the vast majority of shellfish dishes, the shellfish is served with the shells still on them? Even to the point where if you order like a bowl of pasta with clams in it or something like that, they just leave the shells in, right? Imagine if you ordered egg fried rice in a Chinese place and they left the eggshells in it. You'd be absolutely livid, wouldn't you? So why are we allowing them to just leave the shells of the shellfish in our food, Mark? Why are they not removing the shells and binning them?
Well, as someone who adores shellfish, I have 100% bought into the theatre of shellfish delivery mechanism for us. You're asking the wrong boy, my friend.
Imagine how much easier to eat it would be if they just took it out of the shells for you. Surely.
I have to say, I'm going to be honest, in all my years of eating shellfish, I have never failed to successfully eat shellfish. I've never gone like, oh no, I've actually tried to eat this mussel in its entire shell. Oh, mea culpa maxima. No, that's never happened.
Imagine
it's part of the fun of it.
You order a fried breakfast and the beans come still in the can. You wouldn't have it, would you?
Oh, I guarantee there's places in East London where that kind of nonsense happens.
Well.
No, you wouldn't. But there is a tradition of presenting shellfish.
Well, I think it's one of the worst traditions that they're going. And it's probably...
Go on then. List other traditions you hate then.
Right. Anyway, I mean, this segment is too long, isn't it? I was just thinking while I was watching that, I was thinking, no, this has been going on for too long. I mean, it's a fairly simple concept to grasp. You know, mussels sit there drinking the seawater all day, so they'd be a good way of seeing how polluted the water is.
Yeah, it's a very clever idea. Yeah.
We do not need to know quite as much about this project. We don't need to have Maggie going around the lab pointing out every single bit of equipment and then showing us a thing on a computer. And I mean, this segment should be half the length that it actually is.
Correct.
Yeah, but there we go.
But there we go.
It wasn't. So
we play with the hand we're dealt.
Yeah. I think it's the only segment that uses music, isn't it, of the whole episode, as far as I could tell. I mean, there's a little bit of sinister music in Howard's bit, but it's not a.
The Robo-jockeys has a soundtrack, but they add that. I think that must be their soundtrack, whereas this actually has a tune that you track down. No, I think this is the only one. You're right.
Yeah, this is The White Winds / The White Boat by Andreas Vollenweider, who is a Swiss harpist who plays a modified electroacoustic harp of his own design.
Yeah.
But he was big news in 1987 because he won a Grammy. He was the first person to ever win a Grammy Award in the new category of Best New Age Album. Yeah. Do you know who's won Best New Age Album 4 times over the years, Mark, since?
Kenny G?
No. One of your fellow country folk.
I don't know.
It is, of course, Enya, Mark. Enya has won the New Age Grammy 4 times over.
Gosh. Okay. I suppose in my head I was kind of associating more with kind of instrumentals rather than
Orinoco
singing.
Flows.
Fair enough. Orinoco Flows. Yeah, I suppose that. Yeah. Gosh.
But yeah.
Okay.
So I'm wondering whether
just,
he's fresh from the Grammys, so he's on the tip of everyone's tongue. So that's why they've.
I have to say, I wondered
used him.
why this appeared, and it's like now I understand because it hadn't made news. I just remember we went on the same trip, didn't we, to the World War One trenches?
Oh yes, yeah, the song,
and the coach that we took to Ypres. The whole journey, the coach driver played panpipe moves.
Do you think?
And I think possibly you, but it's definitely me. I became really obsessed with that album as a result.
Do you think it was some
and
sort
the
of
choice?
Do you think it was some sort of? It was like an attempt to keep the school kids calm.
Oh yeah. I mean, no, because he was a really dull, boring person. I even remember his announcements. They were so. To be fair, like he's a man who'd been in the trenches himself. Probably had driven plenty of bad schools. To and from Belgium, but I just remember that goddamn music.
I remember there being a rumor that when St Greg's, our neighbouring school, the comprehensive, when they went on a similar trip, somebody ended up with finding a grenade and bringing it on the coach with. But I imagine that's probably one of those stories that everyone tells about the school next door.
Yeah. Especially the more déclassé school as well. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the reason they chose this piece of music is because it's called The White Boat, and there's plenty of boats in this segment. That's something we can tick off.
Plenty of boats. Yeah.
And I mean, they're in Plymouth. I thought Plymouth was quite a large town, but it appears to be a sort of a semi-rural coastal paradise as far as this goes. It looked really nice, didn't it?
There's one scene where it cuts back. She talks about people sending mussels to this institute in Plymouth. Of which we've seen the building in an establishing shot, and then it cuts back later on because when she's saying that people send it back, and there's just like this guy, and he's got his trousers pulled up, and he's just like, do you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the last scene of the Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah.
That's what it was. That kind of beautiful tropical feel to it. The only thing that kind of made it look English was that in the distance there was a little small kind of Victorian pagoda tucked between the trees. Yeah. Other than that, it's like it was stunning.
Yeah, I obviously was assuming I've been to Plymouth, but then actually it's always I've been to Portsmouth, which I don't think is quite as an attractive place.
No, 100% agree. I think I've been to Plymouth. I think I got a car ferry to Santander from Plymouth, but it could be Portsmouth. It's all the same to me.
Do you like mussels?
I do. Yeah.
Mules. Ever had a bad one? Ever had a bad one? That would always be my fear of eating a bad one.
No, in general, as long as the shells are open, you're fine. I actually don't recall ever having bad, because it is one of those things. It's kind of everyone has a friend who's had an apocryphal tale of like having bad shellfish and basically being ruined for life. No, I don't think I have. I've had bad food, but not shellfish. I mean, which is why I enjoy it.
It's surprising we haven't had bad ones, because it seems like they just basically vacuum all of the shit out of the ocean. You would think they'd all be deadly poisonous. The amount of horrible stuff they must be sucking up all day.
Well, I don't buy my shellfish don't come from, what did she say, the Far East? Is that what she says?
Oh yeah. Far East gets picked out. Yeah. I looked at how much does a mussel drink, and apparently 1 square meter of mussels, like a mussel bed of 1 square meter, can filter 150,000 liters of water a day.
Wow.
So yeah, they're pretty good at their, So yeah, I mean, so you can see everything in this makes complete sense. The mussels, obviously, they don't move anywhere, so you know where you're getting your samples from.
Where you pick them up from is where they've been.
Yeah, exactly. And they spend all day sucking up all the water, so you get a really good, clear idea of what is in.
It's very clever.
In the ocean.
Very smart. Yeah. It's one of those clever leaps where especially it's something that exists all around the world. No, it's very clever, but there's just way too much detail.
Yeah.
Also, as someone who enjoys Mool, and you pointed this out, and my wife pointed this out, I didn't feel quite the same way, but it's not really a fact I necessarily wanted to know. I think it took you and Josie by surprise that mussels have heartbeats.
Yeah.
Yeah. which kind of, does make one think about one's choices.
Yeah.
When you have moule marinière or something like that, because not least because normally they are cooked fresh.
But then I guess I suppose probably most animals have hearts, but not something really occurred.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
It's not really something that occurred to me, really.
Yeah.
I mean, so does that mean when you eat a oyster raw,
Yes.
you're swallowing its still beating heart?
They're normally chilled, so I hope it isn't beating. But I suppose I never really considered that when you consume an oyster or a mussel, that you are consuming all of an oyster and all of a mussel. That will definitely be in my head the next time I go out for seafood. Yeah, thanks, Maggie.
Well, actually, speaking of it, Maggie is taunting them slightly because she is
great
noticeably wearing a pearl necklace here. It's
Yeah.
obviously basically like wearing a string of sausages to a pig farm, isn't it? I mean,
That's exactly correct.
Yeah, because those pearls have been ripped from the mussel's cousins. Actually, apparently, there is one type of mussel that actually makes pearls itself. You can get mussel pearls from freshwater mussels, apparently.
Oh,
yeah. Keep an eye out for that. I was very excited by this. Well, I wasn't very excited, but I was interested to know more about this global mussel watch that Maggie talks about here. Could not find a single hit.
Oh, really?
The global mussel. What is it? I did find International Mussel Watch, but that came a few years later and was spearheaded by the Americans. So I don't know what happened here. Maybe, I don't know whether Plymouth tried to kick this off and then no one bothered to sign up to it, and then the Americans came along a couple of years later. I don't know. I don't know what happened. But apparently the Americans have had their own US Mussel Watch program running since 1986. And it's actually the longest continuously running project of its kind, because it's still going now. They've used it to analyse the after effects of disasters. So after Hurricane Katrina, it was very useful. And the Deepwater Horizon thing, they were able to see how the mussels were affected by those things. So it was all very useful for them. If you sort of try and look into that project, doesn't seem to be any sort of global connection. It just seems to be an American-only thing. And then there was this international one, which I did in the 90s, which seems to have just tailed off. So I don't know whether there's much. It seems like something that scientists around the world do, but there isn't this sort of global collaboration that Maggie's kind of talking about here. It seems like everyone wants to keep their muscle information to themselves. But I mean, sea contamination is big news at the moment, isn't it? Considering the amount of sewage that gets pumped out in Britain these days.
Apparently half of Britain is just shitting out a window onto the coast.
What was it? I looked at a figure. It was the Environment Agency in 2021 recorded, and it turns out that sewage spills are recorded in hours. They don't do it in like volume, they do it in the amount of hours of spillage. See what I mean?
Well, how does that make sense? Because surely the volume is the key thing.
Apparently it's done in hours, because all of the measurements I could find were in hours.
Whatever.
So in 2021, there were 2.6 million hours worth of sewage spills in Britain.
Okay.
Which is 20.
That seems a lot, doesn't it?
25 times the amount that they had in 2016. So over 5 years, it's gone up.
Wow.
It's gone up 25-fold,
that is not good.
That is disgusting, isn't it? It's genuinely
that is actually rank,
literally, and disgusting. Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen, Mark. What's going to happen? I don't know.
Oh, Jesus, that's awful.
A lot of people blame Liz Truss as well, because she cut so much funding to the Environment Agency and the various trusts and things like that look after the water.
In 46 days?
Oh, no, she was Environment Secretary as well, though.
Oh, when she was Environment Secretary, of course. Yes. Okay, sorry, yeah. Okay, why not? I mean, at this point now, I blame her for my bad RE GCSE.
Yeah.
So
there is this idea that perhaps cultivating mussels more around polluted areas would be just a great way of cleaning them, because they're so good at pulling all the pollutants out.
Yes.
That there's a suggestion that you could just put them in,
Though it does sound dangerously like they would be unfit for human.
Oh yeah, no, you wouldn't want to eat them. But they would still do a good job of cleaning the water.
So what happens when they die then? Where's all the... Oh, well, good. Okay, cool.
Probably a seagull eats them. They can eat anything, can't
brilliant. They can eat anything, yes, that's true.
And one of the more recent suggestions, actually suggested by, so this laboratory that they have, which was called the Institute for Marine Environmental Research in this concrete building that Maddie goes to. It's now called the Plymouth Marine Laboratory, and its patron is none other than James Cameron of Avatar fame.
Oh, nice.
But they've come up with the idea that the mussels could be used to filter out microplastics in the water. Because apparently they're very good at that as well. So they're real little troopers, they are, the mussels.
Little troopers.
Yeah,
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Getting hungry now.
And I did enjoy your joke there, Mark.
With the pampered muscle?
Yes, yeah.
When it cuts to Maggie and she's in the lab, it looks like all these muscles, like individual muscles, like in a spa. And the only thing I can think of is a pampered muscle, is it moody cuddled? Thank you, Russell. I thought you might appreciate that.
I did enjoy that part.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the next thing now. We can't go beyond those heights.
I've had such an exhausting week. I thought I'd have a rest while I watch the bits of the programme I'm not in. And with these glasses from the States, it's no problem at all. Would I lie? I don't even have to lift my head off the pillow. The prism lenses on these mean although I'm looking up, I can actually see the TV down there. So, what's next?
Now, Mark, this is yet another Howard has got the nonsense invention segment in this programme. I was, well, I don't really know how to say this, but I was absolutely shocked by how successful this this invention is.
Which one it is? Really? It's a joke invention. What are you on about?
Yeah, it does look like a joke invention, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it is. Don't tell me anything other than that.
Log on to Amazon, Mark, and there are dozens of pairs of these available.
I'm not going to be tricked by your nonsense. Dozens of pairs.
Yeah, so I mean, so to explain, we've got Howard laying on a beautiful 80s single bed there.
Oh, stunning. Oh, let me write that down. Beautiful 80s bed.
He's got the telly in front of him, and it's doing that great thing that live TV does where, because we can see the telly on the camera, it goes into an infinite loop. So he's got an infinite loop on the TV of him watching it. But Howard's laying down with his head flat on the pillow, which means he has to wear this pair, a pair of glasses with prism lenses in them, which means that he can see round corners, kind of like little miniature periscopes, aren't they? Sort of thing.
If he was stood up and he was looking through them, he'd be looking at his feet.
Yeah, they look to me like something that would be available on they're fresh from America, aren't they? So I imagine they're the sort of thing that would be, advertised late at night and not one of those sort of infomercials that they have.
Not available in shops.
Yeah, exactly, that sort of thing.
Yeah. But wait, there's more.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, did not think they would ever get off the ground because they seem so utterly ridiculous. But honestly, the cheapest pair I saw was $8.99, or you can get a really premium luxury pair for $15.99, right? And then, obviously, I thought, I wonder if I can find an infomercial.
I'm so excited. I adore infomercials.
Hi, it's Zach here to bring you guys today's very unique item, the Prism bed specs. You'll be surprised to know that I'm actually looking at my hands right now. What are these? They use a series of mirrors to reflect your vision 90 degrees downward. Now, just to show you guys what I mean here, I'm going to demonstrate. When you put these on, I'm now looking directly at my lap and my feet, but if I tilt my head back, I can see almost directly forward, and of course that changes. These are really high definition mirrors too. Everything comes in real clear and it looks like it's being fed right through here as if like an HD screen or something like that. These are great for people who have limited mobility or whose necks get cramped really easily. It'll make it so that you can lay however it is you are comfortable and still see what it is you're checking out, whether it be a book or the TV screen. Now we're going to do a little bit of a demonstration here just to show you guys the perspective from which you will be getting. Right now I'm wiggling my hand below the camera. We're going to lift the shades over the camera and show you how it works. Isn't that cool? Now remember, I was a skeptic at first, but now I can't stop thinking of uses for these. They're high quality and highly functional, and we've got a better price than anywhere else you'll find on the internet for these. Get your pair today.
There's times I get so obsessed by infomercial channels and religious channels. It's just the language they use, the unique way they use words that it seems so familiar. And it's the fact that they can talk about the same thing I was a skeptic too. But now I can't stop thinking of uses. Really?
I think my favourite bit from that is the way he describes them as having high definition mirrors.
High definition mirrors?
As if mirrors have definition. But then,
eyesight, Zach.
Obviously, I clicked on there's a link to Pulse TV's website.
Yeah.
Let's go to that, shall we?
Yeah, please do.
Sold out, Mark. Sold out.
No!
Everyone loves them. These things are flying off the shelves. They're super popular, right? But then I thought, I wonder what people are saying in the comments section.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll go down the comments section, and then somewhere, I probably won't be able to find it, but then somebody mentions the film Bucket List. There we go. I looked for these because I saw them in the Bucket List. And Bucket List is a a film starring Jack Nicholson, where he's
dying.
He's dying,
things he wants to do
him and
before-
Morgan,
it's also
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, yeah.
Yeah. So then I found this scene from the bucket list starring Jack Nicholson.
Oh, look at him.
A year if we're lucky. I mean, there is an experimental program that we've been conducting, and I don't want to get your hopes up, but I think you would be an excellent candidate for that. I mean, it's cutting edge.
Hey, Doc.
Yes?
You're blocking my view.
Oh. Sorry.
So
Gosh,
yeah,
what a fun film.
Yeah. So there's a whole scene with Jack Nicholson laying down in a pair of glasses, and to the point where we see his eyes looking at the camera. And apparently, that wasn't in the script. Jack Nicholson had, in real life, had just been in hospital himself, and he'd been wearing a pair of those glasses in hospital, and he brought them onto set with him. And the director, Rob Reiner, saw them, and he said, "Yeah, well, let's include them in the scene. Let's put them in the scene." So not only are these glasses incredibly popular, flying off the shelves, they are bona fide movie stars. These glasses,
Movie star. I have one issue with them, which is the name, because I wear glasses, as you might tell from the logo that I drew for the podcast. I wear glasses. I have prism lenses on my glasses.
Yeah,
they're called prism lenses because the muscles of my eyes don't coordinate properly, so my eyes have to pass through a prism in order to kind of do what everyone else does normally. I cannot watch TV lying down on my bed horizontally. That is nonsense.
Well, that's because you've not invested between $8 and $15.99 and I put on a pair of these, Mark. That's why.
But they're sold out, Russ. What am I supposed to do? And I can assure you, my lenses cost more than that.
And then it did make me think, oh, okay, this does have a use. If you are in hospital and your spine is out of action.
Yeah, one use.
That is actually... So there is a use for them. And apparently I saw some people suggesting that they were using to read. Rather than looking down at a book, they're looking forward. I don't know whether... Is there a situation where you'd be stuck with your head looking forward?
No.
And you hold a book underneath. So maybe that's, that was a suggestion I saw. I don't know.
For the 14,000 people in traction, yeah, I'm sure they have but other than that, no, you lazy gets. Put an extra pillow behind you.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so I mean, all I'm saying, Mark, is that
I'm shocked at how successful they are.
I thought they were going to. I thought they were going to be as useless as the flip down number plate or a gag gift. But actually, turns out there are a lot of people in the world who want a pair of these.
So when is your delivery coming?
Actually, I do watch the television laying in bed a lot.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
All I do is just prop my head up with a pillow. I mean, that's
like most people who aren't animals. The thing is, in order for them to work, like you actually have to be entirely horizontal. But no one goes to bed entirely horizontal. You'll always have one pillow. You'd have to take a pillow away.
Yeah.
That would feel weird, wouldn't it? Like to lie with no pillows in your bed.
You're like you're on a mortuary slab.
Yes, exactly. But even then, they have a little prop in the back of the neck, don't they? Anyway, sorry, Howard. I should have had more faith.
Absolutely. Right. On to the news roundup. Here we go, Mark. Quick fire rounds.
Oh, well, no rest for the wicked.
Britain's involvement in the European space programme has been further threatened this week in a major row over funding. At stake is the future of Britain's spaceplane HOTOL. British Aerospace announced this week that HOTOL had passed the first stage of development with flying colours. 2 years of extensive testing in wind tunnels, computer simulations and engine firings have proved, they say, that the technology behind the revolutionary design of the spaceplane will work. They're claiming that a prototype HOTOL could be flying within 8 years. But that will depend on funding from the European Space Agency, ESA, which meets next month to decide which projects to support. And the British government made clear yesterday that it's going to be urging ESA to cut back its spending. And without British backing, HOTOL could be left by ESA to die on the vine. The Americans are known to be interested in the proven technology of HOTOL, and the designer of the British spaceplane has threatened that if HOTOL doesn't get European backing, he'll be taking his expertise abroad. It could be that HOTOL will yet turn up as an American plane.
It's a bit of a head scratcher, this one, isn't it, Mark? Because it appears to be the case that there's a British project
spaceplane
that is looking for funding from the European Space Agency, and the British government are attempting to stop the European Space Agency from funding. Why would the British government want to stop an organisation from funding a project that would aid us? I don't understand.
On further viewing, I think it's even weirder than that. It's like, to me, the story is that the British government have asked the European Space Agency to lower the amount of funding to British projects. And the spaceplane project seems to be separate to that. The issue there is that the guy is looking for funding from the British government, and he seems to have some kind of relationship with BAE, because British Aerospace, because you can see the banner in the background.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that the weird thing is, I'm not convinced the two, unless your research has shown otherwise, I'm not convinced the two decisions from the government, A, not to fund this space plane, and B, to ask the ESA, weirdly, to give Britain less money.
Yeah, who does
I'm not
that?
sure they're connected at all. I don't, and as a result, I understand the decision not to fund a space plane, because it's one of those things where, like, what the fuck is a space plane? But B, it's like, whether they're connected or not, I don't understand the British government saying to the European Space Station, please don't give us any more free money.
Why would you turn down that rich Euro gravy, Mark?
I don't
Delicious
know.
rich
I don't
Euro
see-
gravy.
The best kind. I don't know. I found this whole thing, bearing in mind it's only a minute and a half long, I found it so bloody confusing.
Yeah, it's a strange one. And also the fact it's called
Portal?
Hotol. But for some reason,
Hotol.
it kept making me think of Hodor from Game of
Hodor, yeah,
Thrones.
that's exactly right. That's all I could think of. Yeah. Hodor, yeah.
Obviously, I was thinking this doesn't exist, and it doesn't, but it did.
Oh,
I mean,
thank God for
the idea of it existed. It's actually a very clever idea. So it's a joint thing between Rolls-Royce, the aero engine maker rather than the car company, and British Aerospace. And Rolls-Royce had come up with a unique new type of engine. So if you want to go to space normally, you've got a rocket, right? And one of the ways of fueling a rocket is with if you've got a tank of hydrogen and a tank of oxygen, and you combine the two, makes a lovely big explosion, rocket goes into space. The problem is, obviously, is that the weight of carrying the hydrogen and the oxygen is a lot, so you have to carry a lot of it to get everything to go up. So the idea of this engine that they invented on this was that you would only need to carry the hydrogen, and then it's got a big like scoops at the front, and it would collect the oxygen from the air as it was flying through the air. And then it would use that to burn the hydrogen. So that meant that the payload was much, much lower, which meant it could be much smaller and much cheaper to launch into the atmosphere. So that was the idea behind the engine. So it was a very clever idea. Unfortunately, it turned out that it didn't work the design didn't work properly. So it never got beyond the sort of drawing board stage. And so basically in 1989 they just stopped funding it, and it died on the vine. Also, as far as the European Space Agency was concerned, the Germans were quite sort of big fans of it. But do you know which country was trying to block it because they had their own rival design for a space vehicle?
I want to say the Netherlands because that's the theme, but I have to say the French.
Yes, of course, the French. Yeah, the French.
Yeah.
French were trying to block it as much as they could, and they basically got their own way in the end. So the project never got off the ground. But the blokes who designed it, including an engineer called John Scott. His surname is double-barrelled, and it's Scott.
Wow.
John Scott, and a man called Alan Bond.
So, why wouldn't his parents just call themselves the Scott?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Oh, dear.
it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Alan Bond and Richard Varville. So they were the sort of people behind the design of it. After they got binned off by British Aerospace, they'd set up their own company called Reaction Engines Limited. And I don't know whether you've probably seen it. Occasionally in the papers, there'll be like a puff piece about how there's a British company designing a hypersonic aircraft, and it's called the Skylon.
Yes, that rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah, and basically the Skylon is an offshoot of this. So these lads left the project, started up their own company, and ever since 1989 they've been trying to refine the technology so that they can eventually build a working hypersonic aircraft using technology copied from this. They still haven't done it, but they are getting better at it, and they are still getting funding. The UK government is still giving them funding here and there for it. But they reckon that if and when their Skylon plane actually gets off the ground, when it's going through the air, it will be able to do Mach 5.5, sort of 5.5 times the speed of sound. But then it will have a fuel reserve in it, and it will be able to go out of the atmosphere. And once it goes out of the atmosphere, it will be able to do Mach 25, which, I mean, if they do get off the ground, that would be pretty exciting. But obviously, it's always so many years in the future that this will happen.
Yeah, quite.
And
sounds like the Thatcher government called their bluff.
yeah, definitely.
Oh, we're going to run off to go to the Americans. Oh, go on then.
Yeah, it's a good return of the Americans, though, isn't it? The Americans are really treated as a threat there, aren't they? Like, the Americans are going to get it.
I'm okay with that.
It's never America. It's never the Americans. Makes them seem so much more sinister, I think.
Yeah, like the Russians.
Yeah,
the Soviets.
But yeah, I mean that's a shame, isn't it? I'm always disappointed that we've gone backwards with aeroplane speeds. The fact that we don't have Concorde anymore.
Wake me up when it's invented.
I reckon year 2030 it'll be invented by.
You do?
Well, that's the future. Okay. That's the future.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It is the future. It is the most futuristic year I can think of.
Easily.
Japanese fish farmers announced this week that they're set to go commercial with a technique which relies on trained fish. They discovered that fish can be easily conditioned to respond to the note E played on a synthesizer. After training, young fish are then released into the sea where they forage for themselves until they're full grown. Then the note played by sonic buoys in the sea brings them all back in. The Japanese say that savings on feed make their sonic technique economical, and they say the fish taste better too.
Now, in a crowded field, Mark, of this episode, this is the biggest load of cobblers, isn't it? This is absolutely...
Are you forgetting 2 segments' time?
Am I forgetting? No, but I would say... I would say that...
Yeah.
I just don't believe this is real. I just don't believe this is real.
Yeah. Okay. I get that. No, because there is
absolutely
none of this feels true at all.
No, it's as you said, it's like an April Fool's segment, isn't it?
It felt like, to me, it felt like an April Fool's segment that had been proposed, misfiled, turned up on someone's desk 6 months later, and it was broadcast.
Yeah.
And the giveaways for me were, I say giveaways like I know this is true. The giveaways for me were it's fish, it's not specific fish. Like if he said like salmon farmers, or if he got into detail, we would have that extra element of believability. But for me, what tips it over the edge is the emphasis of the note being E. Just like that, because that is one of those extraneous details that you add to a lie.
Yeah.
To make it seem believable when actually you should have told us what. So apparently all fish are persuaded by the note E to return to their little fish hutches. I don't know.
How would you train an entire shoal of fish? Because I said, can you even train a fish? And apparently, I mean, if you use food, if you reward a fish enough times, you can get it to do some very basic things. Like you can get a fish to swim through a hoop, but that you'd have to like really intensive training. Yeah. After a long time, it will learn to swim through a hoop if you offer it food or something like that, right? Yeah. So it is conceivable to train a fish, but you could not scale that up to entire shoals of eating fish. Because according to this, they're let loose in the ocean.
Yes, they are.
They're going to go free into the Pacific, and then just suddenly, somebody just lowers
in the water below it, and they all come back.
Yeah, that just cannot be true.
No, it can't be true. No, you're right. Sorry, I was in 2 seconds time that there's something that we both think is utter tosh, but this is not true. No. This is like. And the thing is, like, how it seems so earnest when he's talking about it, especially the bit at the end where he goes like, apparently they taste better. It's like, do they bollocks? Yeah. Because it's bullshit. Yeah. This is fantastic. And again, it was the emphasis on the unnecessary detail at the expense of stuff that actually might cement it in reality. I loved it.
I did think that Howard missed the opportunity for an absolute solid gold dad joke, because he could have said something about tuna fish.
That's very good. Yeah.
I did find some research about fish and music. And apparently, once again, in Japan, some professor, what was his name? Got his name written here somewhere. Dr. Kazutaka Shinazuka. He did an experiment where he got goldfish, divided them into 2 groups, and trained them to bite a red bead when he played short sections of either Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor. Oh, Fugu. Or...
Fugue.
Yeah, no, but it's a Fugu, like the Simpsons episode.
Oh,
yeah. Or Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, right?
Okay.
So he was able to train these 2 groups of fish so that one group would bite the bead when it heard Bach, and the other group would bite the bead when it heard Stravinsky. And he reckons that 75% of the time they would get it right. and that if you played them any other classical music, they wouldn't react.
Yeah.
So he reckons that means they can recognise composers. That was his.
Composers, get the
That's what he
piss off.
That's what he
Oh,
claimed.
stop.
Yeah. So I think maybe maybe they're just a lot of absolute jokers in Japanese universities who just mucking about with fish and just lying.
The weird thing is, Japanese universities are famously incredibly hard to get into. You think you take it seriously when you get in, but maybe you think like, well, I've done all my hard work. This is it now. I'm gonna coast.
But what it did make me think of, actually, this is almost completely unrelated, but it's something I heard about recently, and then I've looked into a bit more today. But did you know that salmon sushi is not Japanese?
What do you mean it's not Japanese?
The Japanese, obviously...
Like they did invent it.
The Japanese have a long history of eating sushi, Mark.
Yeah, sashimi, yeah.
But they considered salmon to be garbage fish, right? Right up until the 90s. So they never even considered making sushi out of it.
Until the 90s?
Yeah, they never considered making sushi out of it because, like, sort of...
Oh, is it California?
So wild salmon has a lot of... parasites in it, and obviously if you've got parasites in your fish, you don't want to be eating it raw. You need to be cooking it. So the Japanese always cooked their salmon very thoroughly. So no consideration to put it in sushi. But one country that had completely parasite-free salmon were the Norwegians. The Norwegians had pioneered salmon farming, and farmed salmon doesn't have any parasites because they treat it with all antibiotics or whatever. And so the head of like the Norwegian Fish Authority or whatever it was called, he went over to Japan and he saw this massive gap in the market. And so over a decade, the Norwegian government absolutely bombarded the Japanese with relentlessly trying to get them to eat Norwegian farmed salmon and to turn it into sushi. And after a decade of this relentless advertising and pressing them into doing it, they succumbed. And now salmon sushi is as popular as any other sushi. Yeah, but it's all down to the Norwegian government. The Norwegian government completely invented the concept. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
That is pretty interesting. Yeah, I mean, tuna is top of the shop, but salmon sashimi is delicious. Yeah.
But you've got to thank the Norwegians for that, Mark.
I will. Next time I see one, I will thank them.
This week, the Nobel Prizes for Science were announced, and in an unprecedented move, the prize for physics was given for a discovery announced just 18 months ago. Professor Alex Muller and Dr. George Bertnotz were the first to identify a superconducting ceramic, a ceramic which conducts electricity with no resistance and so no loss of power. In metals, superconductivity happens only at extremely low temperatures, minus 250 Celsius. But in the last year, it's become clear that in superconducting ceramics, the phenomenon occurs at much higher temperatures. Latest reports claim that superconductivity has been achieved at plus 63 Celsius, which of course is very hot. That opens up the real possibility of the new materials being used in everyday objects at ordinary temperatures. The astonishing implications of this work, from new forms of transport to even faster, smaller computers, have clearly been acknowledged this week by the Nobel Committee.
The fastest ever presentation of a Nobel Prize for Science, Mark, this was. Still
hugely impressive.
Still holds the record in terms of when it was discovered and then the Nobel Prize being presented. I would be fearful if I was on the Nobel Committee.
Oh yeah.
I'd be fearful of presenting a prize of something which then turns out to be a bit of a scientific dead end.
Yeah.
So
being too quick to judge.
Yeah.
I did say in my notes, without having done any research on anything, and now obviously the anti-gene segment has revealed itself to be incredibly important.
And the prism glasses.
Sorry, forgive me. The anti-gene segment and the prism glasses segment, obviously each having equal weight to each other. I did think that this segment, despite the fact that it is dashed off because it's part of the news roundup, might be the most important, possibly consequential segment of the entire piece. It was one of those things where they talk to you for 90 seconds, talk about something, and it could be hugely consequential. I have no idea. But it felt like it could be really important. And the fact that, as you say, the Nobel Prize was given with such alacrity, someone somewhere had faith in it. It's a shame that you don't hear more about it. But then, it's news. So, they're just telling you the news of the Nobel Prize. They're not telling you about it itself.
The thing with this is that it was an amazing discovery which led on to other discoveries. So the idea of the superconductors are materials that have no resistance when they're below a certain temperature, which means that they're great for, electrical things or magnetic things where you don't want any resistance. But the problem is you have to be really cold. And this was the first ever what's called a high temperature superconductor, where actually it doesn't need to be cooled down that much. Still needs to be cooled down a lot.
Game changer.
Judith gets it completely wrong here, though, because she said that it worked at 63 degrees Celsius.
Plus 63,
yes,
yeah.
Which is not true at all.
that was the bit where I was thinking, like, I don't feel like I've heard anyone ever talk about, like, boiling temperature superconductor.
No. So this thing that they discovered, Carl Alexander Muller and Georg Bednorz, they discovered it. It's called lanthanum barium copper oxide, and actually it works at minus 238 degrees C, which is...
That is, so remind me, that is slightly colder than 63 degrees C?
Yes, slightly colder. But the good thing about it is that you can use liquid nitrogen to cool it to that temperature, which is much cheaper and easier than using liquid helium, which is what you'd have to use for other superconductors. So it is good. The funny thing about it is that...
Where did she get 63 degrees from?
No idea.
That's
Don't know
amazing,
where she...
because... That is quite different.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah. It's about.
My tea is colder than that when I drink it.
It's literally 300 degrees difference.
when you put it like that, that sounds like a lot. Is that a lot?
Alexander Muller is still alive. He's 95 years old.
Oh, God bless him.
And Georg Bednorz is still alive as well. He's only 72 though. He's a mere whippersnapper. But the funny thing is their discovery of this. It was Muller's idea to look at this particular type of ceramic, and everyone told him he was like loony. You won't find anything. So the fact that he did discover this, suddenly caused a massive flurry of everyone to start looking at these types of ceramics and try and find even better versions, which they did. And in 1987, there was a thing called the Woodstock of physics. Right.
Wow.
Which sound?
I'm going to assume the '69 Woodstock, not the 1990 Woodstock.
Yeah. Where Muller was the feature presenter, but it featured 50.
You mean headliner?
Yeah, the headliner. Sorry. Yeah. It was very much the Hendrix of the Woodstock of physics, and there was 51 presentations of recent discoveries in the science of high temperature semiconductors. So I mean that is superconductors. Sorry.
Gosh.
So
that sounds so fun.
Yeah, imagine, yeah. But yeah, so that led to other people finding better versions. So there are other ones that are, even higher temperatures. I think the highest is, was it 110 Kelvin, which is
So like
minus 163.
163, okay.
I think that's the highest temperature they've got one working at now.
That's very close to 60.
But the thing is, because they're ceramics, they can't be formed into, they're not like metals, they can't be formed into wires or things like that. So that actually, at the moment, their uses are fairly limited because it depends, they're quite brittle. So it depends what shapes you can make into. There is the idea that they might be very useful in fusion reactors. And obviously, fusion power is merely 10 years away, isn't it, Mark?
It's always, absolutely. I can't wait.
Yeah, and also
can't wait for my own Mr. Fusion.
Levitation devices as well. It was also good.
A hover Mr. Fusion.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's like some kind of Northern Irish car, maybe that floats and.
So look out for that in 2030. I think that's.
I can't wait. Yeah, brilliant. Okay.
Right, and on to the.
This is why we do this podcast, Russ, to get excited.
Now let's get into some serious science.
Serious science.
Wardens in the Glacier National Park in America have an unusual problem on their hands. Their bears are on the booze. It all started 2 years ago when a train derailment dumped 1,700 tons of maize in the park. Well, now the maize has fermented into a sweet alcoholic mash, and the bears love it. The smell attracts grizzlies from miles around who flock to the spot. They're active enough at the best of times, but after a heavy session on the corn whiskey, they're left belligerent and tottering and wandering drunkenly up and down the railway tracks. Well, the wardens are hoping the problem will solve itself next month when the bears go into hibernation, and they'll have the whole winter to sleep it off.
It's not science, is it, Mark? That's a story. A story about drunk bears isn't science.
And finally, Tosh and nonsense, Russ. How is that a Tomorrow's World segment?
Bears is nature. It's not really. They don't really do pure nature
not
subjects.
Really, no.
I mean, it's not a scientific discovery that when left, corn turns into alcohol.
No.
There's nothing there, is there?
There's nothing there.
Apart from,
no, you're right. Yeah.
The fun idea of drunk grizzly bears. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, we're so in the future now that later this year there is a film being released called Cocaine Bear. About a bear.
That is true.
About
Yeah,
the true story of a bear who gets high on cocaine that's being dumped by I don't know, some cartel.
Which is a true story, isn't it?
It's a true story. Yeah. I'm sure the film is completely untrue, but it is based on a true story.
And Ray Liotta's final film as well.
I know. It's the sequel to Goodfellas we always wanted. Oh, he's a schmuck, isn't he? So,
what would you rather be confronted by?
Oh, a pissed bear or a cocaine bear?
Yeah.
Now, am I a commissioning editor for a television channel, or am I a normal person?
You're a normal person out for a walk in the woods.
I think a pissed bear.
It'd probably be easier to outsmart a pissed bear.
Exactly. I think I've got more experience dealing with, pissed people than, Great question there, Russ. Hey, you at home, what's your answer to the question? Why don't you email us at tomorrowsworldallthetime@gmail.com? Would you rather be confronted with a pissed bear or a high bear? I know this is only a very small bit of a larger program, by the way, which I thoroughly enjoyed. But this did really annoy me because it's not Tomorrow's World, and that's not because I'm such a purist. I'm such a Tomorrow's World purist. I'm a puritanical Tomorrow's World watcher. It's more like you could find any other segment and add 3 sentences in and fill the same amount of time, and it's just like it's so egregiously tosh and nonsense that it's actually a bit disappointing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't dispute.
Am I wrong? Am I being too mean?
There's no dispute that it happened. It's just it's not, because I did find the news article for this, so it definitely did happen. Howard's not just made it up. So the train derailment was in 1985. So that corn's been there for 2 years now, which I thought was quite a surprisingly long time.
Clear up the fucking corn.
Yeah. But then it turns out that just 1 year after this, in the autumn of 1988, there were 2 further separate train derailments in the same park, which also spilt corn everywhere.
Really?
So, I mean, I don't know who's driving those trains. I don't know the condition of the railway.
Pissed bears?
The condition of Montana's railways. But I don't understand why, especially in the space of a week, 2 separate train derailments. But by then, the park rangers obviously learnt from this situation the previous year. So they immediately treated the spilt corn. And it says they treated it with lime. But I couldn't determine whether they were treating it with lime juice or the chalky ceramic material lime.
This whiskey mash needs a mixer. Stat.
Yeah, exactly. Because obviously it was to put the bears off it. So I mean, either would work, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, you're just begging for drunk bears, aren't you?
Yeah, I just think it's outrageous that they've managed to crash so many trains in the same.
That is so odd.
In the same national park. I don't know what's going on there.
I mean,
unless the bears are deliberately sabotaging the rails.
That's what I'm saying. Maybe they're driven by pissed bears.
He's got a train hat on, but it's all wonky.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only giveaway.
Terrific crop this year. It's a shame that so many of these apples are going to waste because the market can't cope with fluctuations. So in a bumper harvest like this, it means that mountains of apples often get destroyed. But at last, in future, here in County Armagh, Northern Ireland, these orchards shouldn't be going to waste because they found a new way of using up the surplus. And it's all to do with satisfying my sweet tooth. Which reminds me, it's about time for a tea break.
For some reason, most of us have developed a weakness for sweet things, and unfortunately, not many of them are healthy. Of course, we all need some carbohydrates in our diet to convert to glucose, blood sugar, to give us some energy. But none of us need to get it from this stuff. Pure, white, and deadly, a leading nutritionist has called it. It's fattening, bad for our teeth, and linked to all sorts of diseases.
And it seems to be addictive. Would you believe that in this country, the average person eats about £100 a year of sugar? That's this much in just a week. We're always looking for a healthier alternative to satisfy our craving for sweet things. One way is to try a different kind of sugar. This is the usual stuff, which is really called sucrose. But there is fructose, which many people believe is a lot healthier for you. After all, it was part of our natural diet in fruit and honey for thousands of years before we ever discovered how to cultivate sugarcane. It metabolizes in the body to glucose without causing the fluctuations in the blood that sugar does. Now, you can buy fructose in health shops. It's usually called fruit sugar, but it's not actually made from fruit. Instead, it's usually chemically processed from this stuff, common sugar, and it has no other nutrients in it at all. But this has. Here we have a high proportion of fructose, some glucose, and a little sucrose, together with lots of healthy minerals and vitamins. But how do I get all that sweetness out of the apple and into my tea without losing all those nutritious goodies?
Well, that's at last what they've managed to do here for the very first time.
Any lumps in your tea, Mark? You have any sugar in your tea?
I have a small spoon of sugar in my tea, yeah.
Oh, well.
Not a big one, just a small one.
I was amazed by Bob Mortimer. He used to have 17 sugars in his tea,
which is unreal.
It's
actually unreal.
I can't believe that much sugar would even dissolve in a
Well, it
mug
doesn't.
tea.
Because I'd swear as a child I probably had 4 or 5, and like at some point you hit saturation point and there's just crystals of sugar around the edge of your teacup. No, 17 is because he said he was cutting down. He's down to like 11.
Yeah, amazing, isn't it?
No, I have genuinely a small unheaped spoon of sugar just to give it a little bit of sweetness, but no more than that. And to be fair, I drink a lot of tea, so it does add up.
And no wonder he had a heart bypass.
I know, gosh.
This is a lovely. Is the word bucolic? Is that the word I'm thinking
bucolic?
of?
Yes, indeed.
Lovely,
bucolic was definitely a word.
Lovely
I was thinking
bucolic scene of Macann, and obviously I thought they'd sent him abroad again. Perhaps he'd managed to wangle his way into the Garden of Eden or something. But apparently he's in Northern Ireland, which I think we need to discuss whether that's abroad or not.
We certainly can, Ross. We can discuss that.
But unusually for Ireland, it's a beautiful sunny day, isn't it?
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Must be that one day in August that they all rally around.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fabulous, isn't it? Yeah. And actually, the thing is, at the beginning in the intro, Maggie, when she's doing her live intro, she cuts to Macann. He's in the orchard. He's kind of lying down. He's prone against maybe one of the trees, and the little tea set is kind of laid down beside him. And he says, "Oh, and I'll be discussing about blah, blah, blah." And it looked like an Evil and War adaptation by the BBC. It looked this kind of, as I said, you call it this wonderful kind of upper middle class story of this kind. He looks fantastic. He just absolutely works, doesn't he? In that kind of context,
he's ready to sort of
he's so relaxed.
Cut to some people playing tennis in flannels and some barely
with a wooden racket. Yeah,
repressed
absolutely.
Sexuality.
Absolutely repressed. It's tremendous. It's just so relaxing. And the thing is, like, it comes on the back of pissed bears. Let's not forget how we get here. We should never forget how we get here, guys.
No. Starts to speak dangerously unscientifically, doesn't he? Because he's then trying to tell us about why fructose is better than normal table sugar, sucrose.
Yeah.
And he uses a little what's the weasel word that he uses?
Believe.
Yeah. People want.
But there is fructose, which many people believe is a bit healthy.
Yeah. Who are these people, and on what basis do they believe this?
Correct. It's a bit like a lot of brands use favorite rather than popular or successful or number one. They use favorite because favorite is a subjective word.
Yeah.
Belief is a subjective phrase. That was very striking because it's kind of hidden in there. And once you hear that word, everything else he says is bullshit. I was trying to think of a polite way of putting it. It's like, no, there's nothing behind it.
Yeah. So
because you and I both thought the same thing, which is something we look down our nose upon our American charms.
The Americans.
forgive me, of the Americans, of which we have many listeners, though one assumes they're all English, or British, I should say, yeah. I don't think there's any Americans listening who've just stumbled upon us and go like, oh, this is great, I love this. High fructose corn syrup.
Yes.
Which is seen as a kind of a gastronomic scandal.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people blame it for everything. I mean, I would suggest that maybe the portion sizes is probably more the reason why Americans are quite so large.
The quantity doesn't help, does it?
No. So I did look into this. I did try and find out, is fructose more healthy?
Is it better for you
than
or less
sucrose?
worse? Yeah.
And it turns out it's not really. It's sugar. What is interesting is if you are diabetic, then fructose is your friend, because there's different types of sugar. But there's monosaccharides and disaccharides. So monosaccharide is the sugar is only one molecule, and the only sugars that are only one molecule are glucose, fructose, and something called galactose. I don't know if it comes from space, maybe. But sucrose, table sugar, is actually a disaccharide, and it's made of fructose and glucose stuck together. So that means that your body then breaks sucrose down into fructose and glucose. And glucose is what our body wants. Our body loves glucose. It can process it in all of our cells. That's what it's looking for. And that's basically the number one sort of energy source that we're looking for. Fructose, our body doesn't like as much, and so it can't process it in all of our cells. It can only process it in our livers. But what that does mean is that fructose doesn't have any effect on our insulin levels, because our livers are sorting it out, so it doesn't trigger the release of insulin. So that means that if you're diabetic, fill your boots, have as much fructose as you like. It's not going to cause a diabetic shock or whatever. So in that respect, you can kind of see how it might be useful to have this. If you wanted to sweeten something for diabetics, then you want to stick a load of this in rather than regular sugar. But that's not something he mentions in this, though, is it? It doesn't say anything like that. No. He seems to be obsessed with the idea of keeping all the vitamins and minerals that are contained within the apple. That seems to be like a big thing he's talking about. As if they're selling it. Oh, it's sugar that gives you vitamins, which I'm not.
But that's also another issue, which is that he illustrates bad sugar by having a cup of tea in the orchard, and he actually even pours powdered cane sugar into a bowl. The actual product we get at the end of all his processes is not granulated sugar at all. It's a syrup. And this is like, that's a bait and switch. That's not accurate at all. This is not a sugar replacement in the more literal sense that he illustrated earlier. It's a small s sugar replacement. It's a sweetener replacement, basically, because he even says like this is used as a natural sweetener in other products. Like it's hidden in something to make it sweet. The only thing about this, I really liked how this segment looked.
Yeah.
I really liked that it gave us the one example of a presenter speaking loudly over loud noises. There's a moment when he's in some kind of glass house and he's sitting down at the table, puts his arm up, and he catches an apple perfectly without moving his arm. That is brilliant. Kudos to the person who threw the apple at pace with utter accuracy. But it's one of those ones where then the more I watch it, the more I'm thinking like, hang on a minute, this is not what you're saying it is. This is just the sweetener that they make at the end of it. This fruit sugar, this fructose sweetener that no doubt is probably hidden in umpty-trumpty things that you buy in the shops is interesting. Except that he's trying to sell it as something that it actually isn't.
Yeah.
And that is slightly disappointing. It's like the product has not said it is what Macann has said it is. So as a result, that it just feels like it slightly falls apart.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
It's concentrated apple syrup.
It's concentrated apple syrup. Yum, yum.
I couldn't find concentrated apple syrup. I could find fructose, but it comes in powdered form. You can buy powdered fructose.
And so you actually can get powdered.
Yes, yeah. But presumably it hasn't got all of the vitamins and minerals that he claims to be.
Yeah, indeed, that he's obsessed with us having.
Yeah. But you can buy 2.5 kilos of fructose for 15 quid.
That sounds quite expensive. Granulated sugar doesn't cost that much.
But fructose is up to 1.8 times sweeter than normal sugar.
Wow. Okay.
So you're
basically getting 4.6 kilos of sugar for the price of 2.5. Okay.
So you can obviously use less of it, which is useful if you're making a diet meal. Yeah. You could stick a load of fructose in it rather than sucrose, and it would have less calories.
Well, not a load of fructose.
Right, yeah. It would have fewer calories, and also the sweetness of it doesn't linger in as much as it does for sucrose. So if you want something that somebody, like if they eat it, it tastes sweet when they eat it, but then that sweetness goes away from their mouth quicker.
Yeah.
And apparently fructose is better for that as well.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
But yes, I mean, fructose is used. It's used in the food industry. I couldn't find out whether this particular apple-based one is used. And also, I did find out whether high fructose corn syrup was in any way related. And it turns out that high fructose corn syrup isn't really... It's called that because it has slightly more fructose in it than sugar. So it has sugar is 50% glucose, 50% fructose. The high fructose corn syrup is 55% fructose, 45% glucose. So it's only 5% more fructose in it than normal sugar. So it's not really got anything to do with this. So it's a bit of it's slightly, mislabeled really.
Yeah.
So this isn't as unhealthy as that.
But not by much.
But it's all sugar, Mark. So you shouldn't eat too much of it, whatever it is. But then you can't have too much sweeteners either, can you? Because they make you either shit yourself or get cancer, don't they?
The two things I associate with sweeteners are shit yourself and cancer, which is just like... Yeah, I'm going to pass.
Yeah. Stick to savoury. Just stick to savoury, Mark. There's nothing in savoury food that can hurt you.
Oh, a lovely salty tea. So Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
As I said to you in the notes, I don't believe Northern Ireland is abroad. I believe it is domestic. However, in the context of stitching together this universal narrative of tomorrow's world, in the context of that, surely anywhere outside the postcode of W12 constitutes as abroad.
He had to cross an ocean, Mark. I feel like
an ocean. Yeah, he did. He had to cross an ocean. You're absolutely right. He did. It must have taken him minutes.
And I just feel like also because it's Macann, the weather has smiled upon him as well.
Yeah, I have to say the reason I might be tempted to tick the Macann abroad button on our audit is because it looks so delightfully foreign and exotically warm and hot that it feels abroad, even if it legally isn't. But I'm persuadable, but we're not there yet, so let me percolate on that.
Actually, lots of lovely sunny segments this episode. Considering October, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, they're all filmed in the summer, aren't they?
Yeah. Right, final segment.
Just the one. Now, it was back in 1902 that Scotland Yard first arrested a burglar on the strength of his fingerprints. And since then, of course, they've developed a vast range of powders and chemicals which will pick up even the faintest of dabs. However, they're always looking for better techniques, and here is the latest. And it really is quite interesting because it's so different. It uses bacteria. You see, when you leave a fingerprint behind, what you're actually leaving there is a thin layer of sweat and grease from your fingertips. And what the Metropolitan Police's forensic scientists have done is to isolate bacteria that will grow on that grease. They're called Acinetobacter calceoaceticus, and they're the orange blobs that you can see there. And normally they thrive on the greasy areas of your skin, like your nose and your fingertips. Well, the problem now is to get the bacteria out of the bottle and into contact with your fingerprints. So say this carrier bag here is your piece of evidence. And if you've got no idea where the fingerprints are, what you'd have to do is to immerse the entire bag in this very warm jelly which contains the bacteria. But if you have an idea where those fingerprints are, what you do is put a little mould around the area and then pour in the jelly, and you then leave it for 48 hours, during which time it sets, and the bacteria will have grown in patterns which exactly match the fingerprints. So here, in time-honoured tradition, is one which we prepared earlier on. So you then remove the mould, take a thin piece of plastic film, flip the jelly onto it, and the fingerprints are on the surface of that jelly. You then dry it, and when you dry it, it shrinks rather incredibly to that kind of size. Now, I can make out the fingerprints on there, but they are rather tricky to see. So what the police do next is to dye them blue. And if we just dim the lights down, I think you'll be able to make out those fingerprints without any trouble at all. But it is difficult to believe that they are bacteria prints. So let's take a look under the microscope. Now, we start off with the large fingerprint. Let's just move it round, go in closer and closer. And what you should be seeing is that that print is actually made up of thousands of tiny dots. And each one of those dots is a cluster of bacteria.
this is one of those ones where I can absolutely see it's very clever what they've done.
Yes.
And it makes
Very clever.
Yeah, I completely understand what they've done.
Yes.
I cannot understand why they've done it. What is the what is the
You
point?
said that. I don't understand. It's one of those things where, like, oh yeah, what an interesting solution to a problem that was already solved. Because the dusting of prints is like successful.
Yeah, works a treat.
Works an absolute treat. Whereas this bacteria thing seems to be much more complicated, much longer, and only seems to work if you actually know there are prints there. Otherwise, you are having to pour this bacteria jelly over entire objects just to see what happens. Am I wrong?
And presumably only works on things that you can lay flat as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Like you can't go into a house and just like pour jelly onto a television screen or a door handle just to see what happens. I was unconvinced by this, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a solution in search of a problem, really.
Yes.
As far as I could tell.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, very clever. Like the process they went through is interesting, and you know, even when she shows us like this little plasticine circle with the jelly mold in, and then takes the photo, it's like, oh, it's really interesting. But like dusting prints takes seconds.
Yeah.
So next.
Yeah. So I mean, I watched a whole video of a man demonstrating how they take fingerprints from a modern crime scene, Mark.
Yes.
Do you know how they do it?
Do they dust for
Yeah, they do. They dust for them. And they use if it's a flat surface, they use tape to lift the prints off.
Yes.
But if it's a non-flat surface, he demonstrated it with a doorknob and a golf ball.
Yes.
He dusts them first, and then he's got this basically a toothpaste tube full of silicone. Just smears it on.
Yeah.
Smears it on there. Leaves it for 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Peels it off. He's got perfect fingerprint on the silicone. Like magic.
That's amazing. Yeah.
He does not need to wait. How many hours was it? Did you say 4 hours? Was it?
To me, it felt like weeks passed.
Yeah. So I mean,
how long does it take bacteria to grow in the size of a fingerprint?
And what
more than 4 minutes.
The other thing I was wondering was bacteria don't just stop growing.
No.
I hadn't
even thought about that.
So is there not a danger that
they just fill in the
gaps?
gaps?
Get some particularly, keen bacteria that just grow really quickly, and then
eager to please.
Yeah, and then your fingerprint is just a big splodge.
Yeah.
No, I don't know.
No, you're right. I hadn't even thought about that. That makes perfect. Was it? I think I told you in a previous episode about the Polish guy who committed all those traffic offences in Ireland. Like he was the number one person who'd like been stopped more than any other individual in the history of the Gardaí. Yeah, and it just turns out that it's because the Gardaí were writing down the Polish word for first name. Every single time. And that's what it feels like. It's like, you're going to come back after, a couple of hours away. You come back to the lab and you can discover that it's the same mono flat print guy has done it again. When are we ever going to grab this bastard?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, so, yes, I could not find this in use anywhere. But I did find that there's, to be fair, slightly connected to it. It turns out that they reckon that each person's bacteria profile is unique to them. So we've all got all of us, our skin is covered in bacteria, but because of we've all had very slightly different lives, everyone's mixtures of all the various bacteria is different and individual to each person. So they reckon that you can create a bacterial fingerprint, not actual physical fingerprint, but like each person has a very specific selection of bacteria on them. So they do reckon that you could use that as a way. If you couldn't get a actual fingerprint, you could determine who a person was that touched something by getting their particular bacterial fingerprint. That's an idea that they've had, but only in recent years. It's not been. I think I found a paper relating to it from 2021, and they're still talking about it theoretically. So it's not been used to solve any crimes yet or anything. They do think that is a possibility in the future, but that's not the same as this. It's kind of similar. Yeah, this is just nonsense.
Nonsense. Brilliant.
Have we had so many nonsense segments in one episode? I think this might be our break our record.
Oh, I can check the database because I definitely feel like there was definitely one episode where what made it through the future I just put NA. So, but the thing is, this definitely does feel like there's more because the whole This Week news segment has a couple in there. There's like they rattled through some.
But it's nice to finish off as the credits are rolling. To finish off, we go straight back to Howard. He's
back in bed.
Back in bed, and Maggie runs over to join him, and she has a little glow on the prism glasses as well.
She does. She breaks her neck trying to lean back to watch the TV of herself.
Yeah, and it's got a real sort of kid's bedroom feel about it, isn't it?
It does actually.
Yeah.
It looks like they're having a right good laugh.
Yeah,
Yeah, because obviously Peter and Judith are the other end of the studio. Yeah, that's nice. Nice bit of business at the end.
Yeah, and that is the end.
Shall we? Yeah. Let's shout.
Yeah, go
Shall
on
we?
then. Go on then.
Go
Might
on
as
then.
well.
Let's crunch
While
those
we're here.
numbers. we could just stop, Russ. No. Madness. All right, let's go. Cinema box office. 1987. October 1987.
Yeah, this is from the week. This is from the actual week. So we've got a solid top 10 here. Some good films. Number 10, Wish You Were Here. This does not star Judith Chalmers, unsurprisingly. I've never heard of it. Have you heard of it, Wish You Were Here? No?
It doesn't ring a bell. No.
Number 9, Dragnet.
Oh, that rings a bell, my friend.
I have to say, I reckon Dragnet is an underrated film.
I
don't think it's got very good reviews, but I've always really enjoyed it.
Yes. I was actually thinking about Dragnet about 2 weeks ago. And I was thinking, I think that probably holds up in a way that it was so odd that I don't remember anything where I go that hasn't aged well. Because it was so weird.
Yeah,
It turns out it genuinely is a bunch of Satanists.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And the whole goat leg thing, and it's great.
It's fabulous. Yeah, and the performances are brilliant. I really want to watch that again.
And
delighted to see it's in the top 10.
It's got that rapped. It's got one of those rap theme tunes, isn't it?
It does. Yeah, that maybe hasn't aged well.
Number 8, Hope and Glory.
Okay, yeah.
You heard of that?
Good film. Yeah.
Number 7, absolute classic, Lethal Weapon.
Oh, one of your faves.
Wow, yeah, definitely.
Genuinely one of your
can't
faves.
beat a bit of Boosie, as I say.
Somewhere in one of my drawers, I have one of your party invites received one year, where you Photoshop yourself into.
Actually, that was the aforementioned Paul Marshall who did the Photoshopping.
Yeah.
Number 6, Outrageous Fortune.
I've never heard of that.
It's got Bette Midler in it, but I've never heard of that.
No.
Number 5, Hellraiser.
Okay.
I've never seen a Hellraiser film.
I've seen the first one. It was pretty spooky, pretty unpleasant.
I saw Terrifier 2 the other day.
Is it the clown thing?
It's the goriest film I've ever seen in my entire life.
Wow, that's a claim.
But the thing is,
that's the black and white clown.
Yeah.
Film black and white, yeah.
It is objection of gory. But the thing is, it doesn't take itself too seriously, so you can't really get upset by it. Number 4, Full Metal Jackets. Bit of Kubrick.
There we go.
Number 3, The Untouchables. I got very upset the first time I ever saw that. I got very upset when Sean Connery got killed in that. It's a really horrible death scene.
I don't remember the death.
He gets machine gunned really, really badly.
Oh, yeah,
on his front doorstep.
Yeah.
Number 2, Dirty Dancing.
Gosh. Okay. Yeah.
And number 1, Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Oh, gosh. All right. Cool.
That's good. That's a good lineup, isn't it?
I've said gosh a lot in this episode. Pop chart.
It's better than Blaspheming, Mark.
Yes, that's true.
Number 10, Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley.
Amazing.
Number 9, I Found Lovin' by Steve Walsh.
Don't know that one.
Number 8, I Need Love by LL Cool J.
Okay.
I didn't know LL Cool J went back that far.
Oh yeah, he's like 60 something there, I think.
Number 7, I Found Lovin' 1987 by the Fatback Band. There's 2 songs called I Found Lovin' in the charts at the same time. Do you reckon they're the same song?
Oh yeah, I reckon maybe it's because one has 1987, so maybe that's how they've separated them, and the original has come back into the charts perhaps based on the not remix or the cover.
Interesting
theory.
Number 6,
never heard either.
Bad, Michael Jackson. Number 5, Crazy Crazy Nights by Kiss. Number 4, absolute classic, Crockett's Theme by Jan Hammer. Maybe. Obviously, it always makes me think of somebody refilling a NatWest cash machine at night time.
Yeah, it's not all work. It's just the paper's a bit more expensive.
Number 3, Pump Up the Volume by Mars. Number 2, Full Metal Jacket, brackets, I Wanna Be Your Drill Instructor by Abigail Mead and Nigel Goulding.
Okay.
That sounds like it's going to be full of samples of R.L.E. Ermey from the film, doesn't it?
I don't believe for 1 second Stanley Kubrick would have put that on the soundtrack to one of his films.
And number 1, You Win Again by the Bee Gees.
Oh, okay, cool.
Their last good song, I would say.
Ooh, yeah, good share. Prices, Russ. Talk to me prices.
Prices. Gallon of petrol, £1.70. Bottle of whiskey, Grant's, £7.29. Pint of lager, 92 pence. 20 fags, £1.43. Sanyo VHS recorder, £319.95.
Why are you reading these out like you're reading out the classified results from football? Pint of lager, 92p.
Mobile
fags, £1.42.
Mobile phone, which is a Nokia Cityman 1320. I don't know what that looks like, but that was a eye-watering £1,950.
So much money.
Daily Mirror, 18 pence. Ford Sierra, £9,679. 10-pack of Golden Wonder crisps, 99p.
Gosh.
And a tub of Flora margarine, 28 pence.
Argos catalogue, Russ.
Now, Mark, I could not believe this.
I witnessed this moment. Go on, describe it.
I searched the Argos catalogue cover to cover.
You did.
And I checked the index to make sure I wasn't seeing things.
Thumb bloody from paper cuts.
I could not believe
Flicking through it, yeah.
There were no kettles in the 1987 autumn-winter Argos catalogue.
Which is amazing.
That's absolutely bonkers, isn't it?
That's insane.
I mean, unless somebody had the foresight and knew that everyone's electricity was going to be cut off for 2 weeks, and therefore would have no use for kettles. That's my only explanation. Or they had a falling out with Russell Hobbs temporarily. I don't know.
Just me, yeah. So that's it. We move on.
It's impossible for me to determine how much a kettle cost at the time.
We'll never know.
No.
It's lost to the mystery of time, isn't it? Magazine covers.
Well,
By the way,
yeah,
he was furious, genuinely furious.
I might write a letter to
Ian Argos.
Yeah. New Scientist has a really boring picture of a trench, and it says archaeology on a damp track. Also in the issue, gravity in the UK and X-rays slice into the heart of the matter. Honestly, that's one of the most boring magazine covers I've ever seen in my life.
Gosh.
Time magazine.
Gosh.
Time magazine has The Heat is On.
Obviously
tying into Beverly Hills Cop.
Yeah.
And it's about climate change. It's a picture
of disappointing.
How the Earth's climate is changing and why the ozone hole is growing. There's a picture of the Earth inside a greenhouse. Clever there.
I thought they were going to have like a special pull-out poster of the Beverly Hills Cop cast or something like that.
Private Eye has Cecil Parkinson at the Conservative Party conference. He's being clapped by Maggie Thatcher and Dennis Thatcher, and he's got his arms up, and it says he's saying, "From now on, no more cock-ups." So I presume is a reference to his
shenanigans,
notorious
extracurricular activities.
Activities.
Yeah. That's the phrase, isn't it?
Yeah. Viz. It's featuring Mrs. Brady Old Lady and Tubby Tucker, the big fat person. It's also Battle of the Bobs. Who's the greatest Bob of all? Monkhouse versus Charlton. I wrote Beatles' hit record on the toilet, claims window cleaner. And are British Telecom a load of crap?
Well, that's Mr. Tucker.
Yeah, that must be written by Mr. Tucker.
Yeah.
And Playboy. It's a Back to Campus issue, and we've got Brandy Brandt on the front cover, and she's ripping in half a piece of lined A4 paper. Also inside is The Women of the Top 10 Party Schools, Pigskin Preview, Who's Going to Win in College Football, Patriot or Pirate, a fighting interview with General Richard Secord. Sorry, the text is handwritten, so I'm quite hard to read. Donna Mills makes a smash landing, Star Appeal, Who plays the charity circuit.
Wow. Incredible, just ready for the articles. Okay then, so let's get into the proper order then. Most important invention. It has to be, they weren't antigenes, what were they called again?
Antigenes. No, the antisense RNA drugs.
It does feel like that's the standout innovation or invention that we see this episode, in the sense that, like, you literally listed what it has helped alleviate. The list of ailments that it's
that I pronounced
close to sorting.
That I pronounced perfectly.
Oh, it was unreal. I couldn't correct any of them. You nailed it. The way you pronounced Alzheimer's was perfect. It was like it's my one regret was that you said diabetes, not diabetes.
Obviously, my mind immediately thought of
diabetes. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's like that's astonishing. Like it might have us all living forever.
So yeah, not only is it proven to work, it also still has plenty more, gas in the tank in terms of things it can do.
Yeah,
as time goes on. So yeah, great idea, great invention.
Most worthless invention.
I know. Flip down number plate, Mark. Flip down number plate. I've got a soft spot for the prism glasses now, so it's got to be flipped down number plate.
Yeah, I know you do. And obviously the sonic fish shepherding device is just made up.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
so yeah, actually, do you know what? I think you're right. It is the light of it because we actually see that some idiot has invented that and managed to persuade the BBC to broadcast it. So I'm with you on that one. Most inaccurate prediction of the future. Oh, the Robo-jockeys. It's sweeping America. It's the most successful new sports launch for a generation.
Yeah, either that or Judith reckoning that space plane was going to be in the sky within 2 years or whatever she said.
Oh, she did 3 years, didn't she? Yeah, which is just. I did get annoyed by that because, like, I was thinking, like, I know it's our job to order these things and not Judith's job. But surely at some point, Judith, especially because she's been on this show for over 10 years at this point, she must have gone like, I should be seeing space planes. Oh, well, maybe I won't think too hard about it. Like, come on. Yeah. Why is she so gullible? Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Yeah, because that's risible. Okay, perfect. Okay, worst screw up by a presenter.
Well, Howard calls the number plate a nameplate.
That's bad, and I know that wound you up.
I enjoy car accuracy, Mark.
Yes, you're a stickler for car terminology. Yep, that has to be it then, doesn't it? Perfect. Best attempt at making something boring interesting?
I guess the exciting, fun-looking models in there.
Oh, that was good. I was thinking. I was thinking about the muscle memory section, the muscle thing, because ultimately it's quite boring, clever but boring. But Maggie travels all over Plymouth to film that segment.
Or what about the fun sort of photo story style presentation?
Yeah,
Mr.
that's
Tuckett,
it, isn't it? Yeah, because so far we've never ever seen a Jackie or Agony Aunt style still photo montage.
Yeah.
So yeah, perfect. Oh, I love that one. Best use of music. There's only one example. Well, there's two examples, isn't there? There's the kind of the thriller music when Howard is hunting down the Robo-jockeys, and then there's the actual use of an actual song later on. Which do you prefer?
I think we've got.
Sorry, there is the third one. There's also the outrageously unnecessarily bombastic kind of timpani drum roll, and then cut to the most municipal, boring concrete building in Plymouth.
See, but I think that's part of the same piece of music. I think that is.
Oh, you do?
Yes, I think it is. Yeah. So I think we have to count that piece. I think that piece of music serves.
Because if it's used twice, then definitely. Yeah. Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah. Best or worst use of furniture?
Oh, it's got to be
the bed.
It's Howard's bed, isn't it?
It's got to be Howard's
bed.
The
only other notable piece of furniture is the lovely wrought iron garden furniture that Macann's sitting on,
which is nice.
But no,
classy, but
it's not as good as Howard's 80s bed.
Most notable clothing?
I mean, there's a couple of things here. There's the silk jacket.
That's instantly my pick.
There's Howard's general outfit. Or
it's good.
Or Maggie's wearing a pretty strong dress on that last segment with the fingerprints, that black dress.
She is.
Which, unfortunately, the sleeves do match the body on this.
I was going to discuss that. We're going to get there in a minute, but unfortunately, at no point do her sleeves not match her body. I'm thinking the Robo-jockey silk jacket.
Yeah.
I couldn't. Completely unnecessary.
Yeah.
Did we see anything in the episode that made it through to the future? Well, we saw a couple of things at least, I think.
Yeah, the medicine we saw.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the superconductive ceramics has made it through, but only as some kind of dick waving competition for scientists to work out how hot they can make it.
They're still very much using mussels to analyse the seas, and
yes, they are. Yeah, maybe not in the same way, but yeah,
of course,
they are.
Almost everyone.
Yeah, you're right, Russell.
You know, most people have got a pair of prism glasses now.
Well, apparently, because I can't buy any, so everyone else must have them. Oh, and fructose is made of through to the future, I suppose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what does this episode tell us about the 15th of October 1987? This, I think, tells us more about the specific day than a lot of episodes because they specifically reference the bad weather.
Yeah, and more than once. But both
really
Maggie
do.
and Howard make strong references to how bad the weather is outside.
Yeah.
So it must have been bad for them to
comment on it, because it's not obvious. It's not obviously bad. I mean, Howard's not wearing, is not holding an umbrella, like, and you can't hear. You can hear like a light rain, so it must be awful. I don't know. Amazing is the wrong word, but I think it's kind of amazing that, on this evening. This is the day of the night, isn't it?
I presume. I don't know where. I'm not sure where the weather was presented from back then. Presumably somewhere in television centre. So mere yards away from where they are.
Yeah.
Michael Fish is warming up. He's getting his script ready for his famous gaff.
Because I assume it was after the 9 o'clock news, wasn't it?
Yeah, it would have been, yeah.
It must have been, yeah. So, yeah, he either did it there or like in Bracknell, where the Met Office used to be based. Gosh, imagine being so close to a moment of such iconic history. And to not know it. Normally we pick a day because we want to talk about something else. You know, something that we remember, kind of an iconic moment. Actually, it was really exciting to watch something that was presaging something amazing happening, or awful, I suppose, depending on your perspective. Yeah, when I first turned it on and Maggie was complaining about the weather, I mean, I was taken aback a bit. It was amazing. TW tropes: presenter having to speak over loud sounds. Thankfully, yes.
Macann brings it out of the bag there.
I think I genuinely believe that might be my favourite trope.
Oh yeah. He's the best one.
Maggie Philbin's sleeves don't match her body.
Shockingly, we see Maggie in 3 completely different outfits this episode,
Absolutely.
And each one of them is completely matching. I don't know what's going
maybe
on.
That's the worst screw up I ever seen. Something to do with oil rigs. Nothing to do with oil rigs.
No, there isn't. Is there? No.
Though my wife does want to know, you probably haven't seen these because there's been ads on TV for Amazon Prime's new drama, The Rig.
Oh.
And she wants to know, have you watched it yet?
Is what's his name from Line of Duty in that? Little Scottish fella.
Yeah, he is, yeah. Suspiciously obvious brand name and the ad-free BBC.
Well, I mean, I can't wait to get down Gateway and...
That's a tick, isn't it?
Do a little rap while I'm getting my groceries.
Clear and blatant lying.
That fish segment is just please.
It's utter bunkum.
Yeah.
Evil farmers. We're too late in the Tomorrow's World era.
Even the closest thing to a farmer, the horse farmers, they were actually being kinder to the horses, I think.
They were being kinder to the horses, yeah. Casual sexism. I didn't obviously notice anything, or I didn't notice anything obvious. Dad joke from Howard Stableford.
Oh yeah, I get a few bob for this down the estate comment.
That's a classic dad joke, isn't it? Yeah. Episodes in a damp squib. Episode ends on a damp squib.
No, I don't think.
Not egregiously.
No.
Like the fingerprinting we know was nonsense, but not at the time.
No.
And actually, if that had been the last thing, maybe yes. But the last thing is actually Maggie and Howard faffing about with the prism glasses. So which I quite liked. Woolard and Macann abroad. I'm going to say yes, Russell, and because I've been thinking about this, and it's because we picked the word abroad to capture a sense of William Woolard and Macann being the only presenters of their generation being allowed to escape the confines of television centre. And so I think Northern Ireland isn't abroad, strictly speaking, but I think it successfully fulfills that sense of, well, how come he's allowed to go away? Why am I in the car park?
Even though
Howard goes to America. Yeah. That still feels like he's on a tight leash. Yeah, I can't quite explain it, but you know what I mean. So I'm happy with that. There were no lasers.
No.
And there were no magnets.
Right, yes, there were actually.
Oh, were there?
Holding the number plate up.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
A pair of magnets.
Oh, well remembered. Okay, yeah. I suppose I tried to forget that license plate, but there were definitely
Boats galore.
More boats than you can shake a stick at. That's absolutely fabulous. Well, that is that episode audited, which I think is absolutely fantastic. I think we're incredibly lucky to have such an important responsibility. We're really working through all these episodes now, aren't we? Yeah. We've got such a head of steam. I think real sense of momentum.
Do you know how many we've got left?
We only have 1,383 episodes left.
Oh no!
So,
good grief!
Yeah,
it's like grains of sand running through a sand timer, isn't it, Mark?
Such are the days of our lives,
slipping through our fingers so quickly.
Oh my God, I can't believe it. I mean, there's barely any left. What was it, Alexander the Great? You know, we were talking about him earlier. You know, he stood and he wept because there were no more worlds left, no more countries left to conquer. Yeah. Sorry, that was a sour note to leave things on, and I apologise profoundly.
I do have to go now, Mark, though, because well, earlier today I got a phone call from a woman, and she said there was a hurricane on the way.
Oh,
and I'm obviously not going to make the same mistake that Michael Fish made, so I'm assuming that there is a hurricane.
Oh, you're going to batten down the hatches?
Well, of course, all of us here in the Netherlands, we all have our own personal windmills, so I need to get out there, make sure I put the brakes on, and maybe dampen it down a bit so that it's non-flammable. Yeah. That's going to be my next move.
Just wrap it in a moist towelette, yeah.
Yeah. Spray it with some asbestos or something.
Oh,
but
wow,
yeah,
geez
so
Louise. You stay safe, yeah.
I will, Mark. Right, that's it from us. So if you are on the internet, we will see you tomorrow.
Bye.